Chapter 1141. The more Muyu thought about it, the crazier he felt. He wanted to make his own rules. Starting from Yu Qianquan's domain, he wanted a perfect Yu Qianquan's domain. Then, the first domain I'll try to control is naturally Father's despairing realm. Muyu took out a jade pendant. In this year, Deadwood Daddy couldn't leave Danding Sect, so he sealed his own desperation domain in a jade pendant. He made 6 of them and gave them to Ni Leijianren, Chu Buku, and Pijien in case of emergency. They could also protect themselves in times of crisis. The jade pendant in Muyu's hand naturally came from Deadwood. Although the jade pendant could seal the power of a domain, its power would be greatly reduced when used. Muyu wanted to completely refine this domain and refine his father's domain into his own. Do you want to ask Deadwood for help? Little Shuai asked curiously. What do you want from me? As soon as little Shuai's voice fell, Deadwood's figure appeared in the Kaishu cauldron. Muyu is looking for trouble again. Little Shuai shouted. Muyu glared at little Shuai, who didn't know what to say. What are you going to do this time? Deadwood looked at Muyu angrily. Muyu always did all kinds of things that he found unacceptable. It's like this. I suddenly want to control your domain. Muyu said a little embarrassedly. Controlling someone else's domain was unprecedented. No one had ever done it before. What? Deadwood's eyes widened. Tian Yin, reincarnation, peak floated in the Kaishu cauldron, shrouded in a golden halo. Here, except for Muyu and Deadwood, who could freely enter and exit, no one else could enter. Peach blossoms and green willows, swarms of bees and butterflies, a scene full of vitality. Tian Ran sat on a stone bench in the pavilion, closed her eyes and meditated. Dummy was in the flowers, catching butterflies with a silly smile on his face. After a long time, Tian Ran opened her eyes. She was still unable to comprehend her own rules, but the current situation did not allow her to waste too much time. She stared at the cave halfway up the mountain. Dummy, what's in that cave? Tian Ran felt like something in the cave was calling out to her. Dummy carefully released a butterfly that it had caught. It scratched its head and said, Master said that we can go back to the past in that cave. However, the cave wasn't like this the last time I was here. It was very magical inside. Go back to the past. Tian Ran recalled what Muyu had told her about the Demon Island and suddenly understood. Then, how do I comprehend my own domain? Tian Ran asked in frustration. Dummy asked doubtfully. You didn't resonate with the sky, evolution, reincarnation peak. Tian Ran shook her head. I felt that there was something inside the cave, but I couldn't get in. Dummy walked to the entrance of the cave and reached out to push it. He didn't feel any resistance. His hand had already reached out, but he couldn't take a step forward. There was a powerful imminent skyline formation here, so he couldn't get in. I don't know. I thought you would understand what to do as soon as you arrived here, because this place is connected to your aura. Dummy looked around and touched its head. Was the mountain damaged by Amu? This is a Taoist instrument. How can it be damaged? Tian Ran also walked to the entrance of the cave and touched the stone wall of the cave. Suddenly, she squatted down and saw an 8 trigrams array on the right side of the cave. 8 trigrams array? Tian Ran touched the 8 trigrams array curiously. Why don't I go find Muyu? He must know what this 8 trigrams array is for. However, when Tian Ran's hand touched the yin-yang fish in the center of the 8 trigrams, a strange aura quickly merged with Tian Ran's fingertips. Tian Ran let out a soft cry, and a light suddenly lit up at the entrance of the cave, slowly forming a figure. This was a handsome man with a dignified appearance. He walked out of the cave with a gentle smile on his face. Tian Ran was stunned. This man was the image of her father when he was young. You. Tian Ran's heart was in turmoil. She didn't know whether the person in front of her was real or an illusion. However, Dummy jumped up happily. It's Master. Feng Haochen smiled. Don't think too much. I live in the past, not in this era. Tian Ran suppressed the excitement in her heart and asked, Hello, my name is, I know you are my daughter. You have my aura, but you don't have to tell me your name. I want to leave a surprise for myself in the future. Feng Haochen reached out and touched Tian Ran's head. Tian Ran gritted her teeth. Her father suddenly appeared in front of her and knew her identity, but she still hadn't met him in person. Ordinary people couldn't understand the bitterness in her heart. You don't have to tell me too much about the future. Why are you looking for me? Feng Haochen walked to the pavilion and sat down. Tian Ran also walked into the pavilion. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. However, Dummy said straightforwardly, she wants to understand the area of the great vehicle stage, but she can't do it because the outside world is a mess now. Dummy, I don't want to know too much about the future. Why don't you go play on a water slide? Feng Haochen smiled. With a wave of his hand, the waterfall on the Heaven Spill reincarnation peak suddenly formed a smooth, winding stone path. The water from the waterfall poured onto the stone path, and the stone path circled around the Heaven Spill reincarnation peak to the foot of the mountain. That's great. This is my favorite. Dummy shouted excitedly and hurriedly ran to the top of the reincarnation peak. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you. Tian Ran was at a loss. She had respected her father since she was young. Even if her father left her before she was born, she had never blamed him. She knew that everything her father did had a reason. Feng Haochen sighed softly. The future is really strange. I don't want to interfere with the future, but I always accidentally meet people from the future. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. Tian Ran said in a panic. Then I'll leave here immediately. Feng Haochen smiled and said, You don't have to apologize. I'll help you. How can I not help my own daughter? Tian Ran looked at her father happily. Really? Yes, but I'm a person who lives in the past. You can't tell me too much about the future, understand? The future is a surprise for me. If there are no surprises in life, then there's nothing to look forward to. Feng Haochen said with a smile. But in the future you'll... Tian Ran was anxious. Even if I die, I don't want to know. Who doesn't die? Do people who live forever have to live forever? If you know what time is, you won't tell me about the future. Feng Haochen's face was calm. Tian Ran didn't understand her father's words. She didn't know what he meant by a person who lives in the past. She gritted her teeth and finally chose to respect her father's request. I understand. Tian Ran forced a smile. Dummy slid down the stone path beside the flowing water, splashing a lot of water as he left. Shadow, Sword City. In a bright and grand hall, Bai Jie was sitting high up on the main seat. There were a total of 57 Grand Ascension Stage foreign race experts gathered here. The aura emitted from each of them was like a stormy sea, and the atmosphere was gloomy to the extreme. So Mu Yu and the others still found a way to come back. Bai Jie stretched out his finger and gently tapped on the armrest. His eyes were as deep as a bottomless abyss. No one knew what he was thinking. Yes, Commander. My 3 brothers were killed by Mu Yu. Shi Xiaoluo said with grief and indignation. You people from the Corpse Clan are really amazing. 4 of you against 2, and 3 of you were killed. How embarrassing. A Bone Clan person sneered contemptuously. The Bone Clan people's bodies were made of bones, but they weren't pure skeletons. Strictly speaking, every muscle of the Bone Clan people was made up of a group of bones. It looked particularly evil. Shi Xiaoluo glared at the Bone Clan person who spoke. Gu Yinsheng, what did you say? I said that you people from the Corpse Clan are really useless. 4 against 2, and 3 of you were killed. The Bone Clan person called Gu Yinsheng repeated in disdain. You're asking for death. You said that we're useless. Then I'd like to see how powerful you are. Sure, Xiaoluo flew into a rage out of humiliation. Red corpse, chi rolled out of his body, and he was about to fight Shi Xiaoluo. Bai Jie snorted coldly, and his voice echoed throughout the hall. Shi Xiaoluo heard Bai Jie's snort and couldn't help but shiver. He forcibly retracted his corpse chi and then lowered his head. We didn't come to the 3rd heaven to hunt and kill each other. Bai Jie said majestically, Yes. Shi Xiaoluo replied unwillingly. Gu Yinsheng was still as arrogant as ever. Bah, how big of a wave can a mere human cause? Bai Jie replied coldly. How can you look down on Jian Ying Chunfeng's disciple? Gu Yinsheng's expression changed slightly when he heard the words Jian Ying Chunfeng. But then he said, Although Jian Ying Chunfeng is powerful, he's no longer a match for Lord Heaven's Keeper. If his disciple had Jian Ying Chunfeng's cultivation, why would we be here? In my opinion, it's best to just kill the Pill Cauldron sect and Array sect. Bai Jie said coldly again. Jianing Chen Feng is someone that even Lord Heaven's Keeper is wary of. How can the backup plan he left behind be so simple? If you look down on Mu Yu, you won't even know how you died. Bai Jie was completely different from these foreign tribesmen who didn't know the situation. He was sent by the Heaven's Keeper to carry out the third heaven. So how could he be so reckless? Gu Yinsheng was speechless by Bai Jie's words. Although he was still unconvinced, he tactfully didn't refute. You said that he used the black and white chi on the heaven sword? Bai Jie asked again. That's right, his heaven sword is too strange. Shi Qiuo recounted the scene. Bai Jie said thoughtfully. It seems that he used Gomong's blink of life and death. But with Mu Yu's potential, I don't think he only controls one domain. What? Could it be that he controls two domains? That's impossible. Chapter 1142. A great ascension realm cultivator could only comprehend one domain. This was common knowledge. Even the other races were the same. However, Bai Jie's words shocked the others. That's impossible. No great ascension realm cultivator can control two domains. Gu Yinsheng denied. What kind of person is Jianing Chen Feng? Didn't Lord Heaven Keeper tell you? Bai Jie said coldly. Gu Yinsheng said in a deep voice, Jianing Chen Feng is an exception. However, I don't believe his disciple has such ability. Jianing Chen Feng's disciple has Spirit Lord Yumeng's power. They control Spirit Lord Yumeng's domain. However, compared to his seniors, Mu Yu is the master of a Dao artifact. His ability is far more powerful than you can imagine. Bai Jie said, if he is so powerful, why don't you kill him before he grows? A wings person asked, do you think Jianing Chen Feng is just a decoration? Bai Jie's dark eyes turned to the wings person who spoke. The wings person looked away, not daring to look him in the eye. Shi Qiuo said resentfully, life and death is a domain in the blink of an eye. If we want to fight him, it means that we have to kill him twice. Otherwise, we will be revived by him. This is very disadvantageous for us, especially since he can use this domain on the Sky Sword. If Gomong used the life and death blink domain, they would not be afraid in battle. However, if it was Mu Yu, they had to take it seriously. A sliver of soul power appeared on Bai Jie's fingertip. There seemed to be countless resentful souls floating in the soul power. He sneered, you don't have to worry about that. The condition for revival in the life and death blink domain requires the existence of a soul. If we want to kill people, how can we let a human soul escape? As a soul race person, Bai Jie was confident that he could prevent Mu Yu from using his revival ability. What he needed to consider was what kind of domain power Mu Yu had. Now that they are hiding in the open ruins cauldron and the array hall, they are a disaster. Are we just going to watch them grow? Shi Qiuo asked. Bai Jie stood up and revealed a strange smile. You don't have to worry about that. The Heaven's Keeper has already told me how to deal with the Cauldron of Ruins and the Array Hall. I believe that the last two strongholds of the human race won't be able to last much longer. The people in the turtle shell will eventually have to come out and accept the fate of being enslaved. The human race in every city of the cultivation world have been enslaved. However, the human race was weak. The news of Mu Yu and the others returning from the ancient battlefield made everyone excited. Everyone from the Pill Cauldron School and the Array faction were working hard to cultivate. They wanted to raise their cultivation to a higher level. They all knew that in the near future, the war with the foreign races would definitely start. Whether it was the Array masters of the Array faction or the alchemy masters of the Dandy School, they were all trying their best to use Array techniques and alchemy techniques in a reasonable way. Alchemy techniques and Array techniques were the strongest weapons in a battle. Many of the Array masters of the Array faction had sealed their Array techniques in their Array foundations. They wanted to ensure that everyone had enough compatibility. Mu Yu was comprehending Ku Mu's desperation realm in the Array Hall. He frowned slightly. There were many things that he couldn't figure out. He still couldn't fully comprehend the Imperial Qianquan technique. Kumu had already told Mu Yu about the characteristics of the desperation realm. However, Mu Yu still felt that something was missing. His imperial Chinquin technique could only exist by relying on other people's domain. He still couldn't directly use other people's domain. However, at this moment, the heart-questioning guide on Mu Yu's body suddenly appeared in his hand. A strange light came from the heart-questioning guide and entered Mu Yu's body. Mu Yu suddenly opened his eyes wide in shock. "What's wrong? I already said that it won't work," Kumu said from his side. Mu Yu looked at the inscriptions in the array hall and then looked at the heart-questioning guide in his hand. He said thoughtfully, "I want to go to a place." "Where?" "The place from the beginning." Mu Yu stood up and left the array hall. He flew into the distance. Kumu didn't stop him. He wouldn't interfere with what Mu Yu wanted to do. Little Shuai laid on Mu Yu's shoulder and asked curiously, "What is the place from the beginning?" Mu Yu flew across the sky above the array sect and looked down at the countless survivors of the human race. He had a trace of understanding in his heart. Master said that when doing things, one must live up to one's heart. If I want to use my heart to comprehend the laws of this world, I want to go to the place where my heart begins. Perhaps there, I can find a certain point of imperial universe. Imperial Chinquin technique was a law that could be seen from small details. It started from the heart and started anew. Cultivation needed to grasp a trace of the concept. Then the place from the beginning of your heart is Flowing Water Village? Little Shuai suddenly realized. Mu Yu slowly said, "It is there and it isn't there." Little Shuai didn't understand, but Mu Yu came to the side of Village Chief Old Bu. Village Chief Old Bu had been commanding the last of the human race for the past year. Most of the remaining humans were self-cultivators, which was ridiculous. Back in the Flowing Water Village, village head Old Cloth had to tremble in fear and be submissive to the immortal master. But now, he, an old man without any cultivation, became the key to the overall situation. "Mu Yu, you're here. Let me tell you about the recent situation." Village Chief Old Bu looked a little tired. Now that the outsiders had taken over the third heaven, no matter how good his strategy was, he could not use it. This was because he did not have enough manpower to resist the outsiders. Mu Yu shook his head and said, "Grandpa Village Chief, you don't have to work too hard. Leave the matters of the Array sect to Master Lu. If there's anything urgent, my father will take care of it. The Array sect and the Pill Cauldron School have built a teleportation formation, so it's convenient to go back and forth. Do you want to go back to Flowing Water Village?" Village Chief Old Bu raised his head and asked in surprise, "Go back to Flowing Water Village?" For the sake of safety, Village Chief Old Bu followed Mu Yu here. Although he didn't have to worry about food and clothing, because he was one of the 9 people with eternal life, he was extremely important. He didn't have any cultivation, so it wasn't safe for him to walk around in the cultivation world. It was equivalent to being grounded in the Array sect. Although Village Chief Old Bu had never left the village before, and the range of the Array sect was thousands of times larger than that of Flowing Water Village, it was not as carefree as Flowing Water Village, and there were no children to tell him stories. "I'll take you back," Mu Yu said. Village Chief Old Bu nodded excitedly. The fatigue of the past few days was swept away, and he hurriedly agreed. After Mu Yu and Master Lu said goodbye, he left the Array sect with Village Chief Old Bu and headed towards the Moyun mountain range. The only place in the 3 continents where there were no aliens was the Moyun mountain range. A powerful formation had been set up in the Moyun mountain range. The aliens couldn't kill anyone here, and now they couldn't even set foot in it. This place had truly become a paradise. The residents of the Moyun mountain range had no idea what was going on in the outside world, let alone that they had become the last place for humans to live. However, there were more and more people in the 100,000 mountains. These residents were all rescued by Changyan from the 3 continents. Who would have thought that the Moyun mountain range, which was abandoned in the past, would become a refuge for humans? Village Chief Old Bu sighed. After a moment, Village Chief Old Bu hesitated and said, "Mu Yu, have you lost hope in the human race?" Mu Yu was slightly startled and asked, "Grandpa, why do you ask?" Village Chief Old Bu smiled and said, "I watched you grow up. You can't hide your thoughts from me. I can easily see what you are thinking. You don't want to save everyone." Mu Yu was silent for a moment and asked, "Grandpa Village Chief, Do you blame me for not saving those people? Old Boo smiled and said, why would I? There's so many cities in the 3 continents. You can't save them one by one. If you save them now, it's very likely that you will be ambushed by the White Realm. No matter what you choose in the future, I will believe in you. Because you never do things without thinking. Muyu nodded silently. The appearance of Flowing Water Village soon appeared in front of them. It was still a peaceful scene. The villagers were farming in the fields, and the resting old farmers were joking with each other about the recent gossip of the village chief. Their faces were brimming with simple smiles, and the wind and rain of the outside world didn't blow here at all. Old Wang, your family's rice is growing well this year. Yes, this year will definitely be a bumper harvest. When the autumn harvest comes, we won't have to worry about food and clothing this year. Haha. The yellow cows were grazing in the fields. The children were sleeping under the shade of the trees. The adults were working hard. The sparrows were jumping, and the magpies were singing. It was full of life, and the atmosphere was harmonious. The villagers here were rejoicing over the good harvest, but the people in the outside world were struggling to escape from a sea of bitterness. No one affected each other, and the originally remote ravine had become a place of paradise at this time. Village Chief Old Boo quickly walked towards the familiar village and loudly called out to the familiar villagers. When the villagers saw that Village Chief Old Boo had returned, they were pleasantly surprised. They all stopped what they were doing and ran over to greet the village chief. They also looked at Muyu with reverence. Immortal Master Muyu! It's Immortal Master Muyu! Aunt Wang cried out excitedly. Grandpa Village Chief, Big Brother Muyu, you guys are back? That's great. Many children also quickly ran over. These people had all grown up listening to Muyu's stories. Most of them were told by Village Chief Old Boo in the past, so they were also filled with reverence towards Muyu. Big Brother Muyu, it must be good to be an immortal master, right? The 2-year-old little Tai Nyo excitedly pulled Muyu's hand and asked, was it good to be an immortal master? Muyu didn't know how to answer this question. An immortal master could ride the clouds, fly through the sky, and break cliffs with a flick of his sleeves. It seemed good, but an immortal master had to experience all kinds of dangerous situations and even be in danger at all times. It didn't seem good. An immortal master can go out and fight Yaman. Big Brother Muyu, did you beat Yaman to a pulp? The 3-year-old little Ya bounced and asked, did an immortal master really exist just to fight Yaman? Muyu thought of those cultivators in Dongsha City who wanted to hand him over to Yaman in order to protect themselves. He also didn't know how to answer this question. Village Chief Old Boo sensed Muyu's mood. He was no longer that village old man who only knew how to tell stories to children. He knew the nature of cultivators, but he still chuckled and said, everyone, don't be anxious. We will be back for a period of time, so let's clean up the house first. Okay, everyone, quickly come and help clean up the house. Aunt Wang shouted loudly. Soon, all the men, women, and children in the village were mobilized to help clean up the house that Village Chief Old Boo and Muyu used to live in. They cleaned up the house until it was spotless. Chapter 1143. Under the old tree in the grain-sunning field, Village Chief Old Boo boasted about the new legend of Muyu to everyone. Muyu listened quietly under the old tree. He found that it was good to stay away from the hustle and bustle and live in the moment. When he was a child, he listened to Grandpa Village Chief tell the story of Yaman and felt uneasy among a group of children. Because he had Mu Yuming's ability, he had always been worried about whether he was a real Yaman or not. Later, he had the qualification to become an immortal and showed his ability in front of Grandpa Village Chief. He promised Grandpa Village Chief that he would be a good immortal master and protect the human race. But now, he seemed to be unable to find his original intention. However, he had never felt that his thinking was wrong. Not everyone deserved to be saved. It started from the heart. His original heart started from here. The rules of the world were colorful and diverse. Starting from a child who listened to stories and looked forward to the future, he had his own hopes and goals and gradually began to work hard. He walked out of the small mountain village and came in contact with the good and evil outside the simple mountain village world. Then, he left the Mayan mountain range and looked at the ups and downs of the world. People's thoughts slowly changed and slowly became different from their childhood self. Growing up was a process of constantly overthrowing the childish self of the past. Muyu looked at the old tree in the grain-sunning field. The leaves were fluttering and the sunlight was shining on his body. It was very pleasant. His heart suddenly grasped some artistic conception. It was said that rules were seen from small details, but wasn't it the same for a person's life? Life was full of rules and heavenly Tao. Even this simple mountain village contained countless heavenly Tao rules. Muyu looked at the passionate village chief and the excited child under the old tree. His heart brightened, as if the sun had pushed away the haze and shone on him. This time, he knew what he had to do. Third continent, Danding sect. Boom! The formation of the entire Danding school was in imminent danger. A violent roar broke out, and the ground cracked as if there was an earthquake. Many self-cultivators' faces changed. In the air, the masters of the Great Vehicle stage and the Crossing Calamity stage, led by the dead tree, had gathered and were all waiting solemnly. Muyu hasn't been contacted yet, Kumu asked in a deep voice. Master Lu said anxiously, Muyu left with Mr. Oldbu 10 days ago. He said he was going to do something. He should be going back to the flowing water village in the Moyen Mountains. The Pill Cauldron School was already surrounded by tens of thousands of aliens. The alien army was aggressive, and among them were countless self-cultivators. These self-cultivators were either controlled or had chosen to rely on the aliens for survival. All of them wanted to break through the Pill Cauldron School. Kumu stared at Bai Jia, who was the leader of the outsiders. His expression was solemn. This was the second time he had clashed with Bai Jia in the past year. Last time, Bai Jia had led the outsiders to attack the Alchemy Tripod sect, but Kumu had used the Open Ruins Cauldron to block them. Bai Jia had been helpless against the Open Ruins Cauldron and could only retreat. But this time, the White Realm made a comeback and actually posed a threat to the opening cauldron. Bai Jia looked down at everyone from the Pill Cauldron School from above. A scroll floated in front of him. The scroll was red in color, and it was engraved with mysterious runes. A vast and ancient aura filled the surroundings as it struck the Open Ruins Cauldron. Every strike caused the Open Ruins Cauldron to tremble. Kumu Chongqing, you are now a person without a body. What are you still struggling for? Bai Jia's voice was majestic and mighty, like that of a god. If it were any other day, many self-cultivators would feel respect for him. But now, everyone from the Pill Cauldron School knew how ugly Bai Jia, who had the appearance of a god in the sky, was. Kumu looked at the red scroll in Bai Jia's hand and said coldly, You actually have a Sumeru, sun-shifting portrait. Bai Jia laughed loudly. His laughter was mellow, but it caused many people to tremble. Kumu Chongqing, you are indeed someone who knows what's good for you. You control one of the 9 Tao artifacts, the Opening Ruins Cauldron, but you won't allow me to obtain one of the 9 Tao artifacts, the Sumeru Sun-Shifting Portrait. The Sumeru Sun-Shifting Portrait was one of the 9 Tao artifacts. Each of the 9 Tao artifacts was extremely mysterious and had their own powerful abilities. Be it the Opening Ruins Cauldron, the Array Hall, or the Sky Spill Reincarnation Peak, they were all amazing. The Sumeru Sun-Shifting Portrait was naturally not inferior. So what if you have the Sumeru Sun-Shifting Portrait? Each of the 9 Tao artifacts has its own merits. You must be dreaming if you want to break through the Opening Ruins Cauldron. Kumu coldly bellowed as he landed above the Opening Ruins Cauldron. Beneath his feet was the ancient and majestic Opening Ruins Cauldron. The Opening Ruins Cauldron slowly rotated as golden runes appeared around it. Chaos Yin and Yang circulated around Kumu, forming a powerful aura that resisted the Sumeru Sun-Shifting Portrait. Kumu, are you still so stubborn? It's only a matter of time before the human race is enslaved by us sacred ones. If you kneel before me and pledge your loyalty to me, I can consider using you. After all, you are an amazing genius. You are considered one of the top existences in the human race. If you work for me, I won't bury your talent. Bai Jia was from a different race. Different races look down on the weak human race. However, Kumu Evergreen was one of the few shining stars of the human race. Even Bai Jie had to admit Kumu Evergreen's ability. Pledge my loyalty to you? Dream on. Kumu took a step forward. The opening ruins cauldron phantom formed by the array runes condensed in the air. It grew larger and larger until it was tens of thousands of feet tall. It was like a heavy mountain in the air that could shatter the void at any time. It was as if the entire world could not bear the weight of this massive opening ruins cauldron. Everyone looked at the opening ruins cauldron in the air in horror. Everyone was shocked by the weight of the opening ruins cauldron. Although the opening ruins cauldron in the air was only a phantom formed by the array runes, the mellow vicissitudes and vast aura was as firm as a rock. Even the faces of the other races changed. Wong. The opening ruins cauldron let out a mighty sound as it charged toward the Sumeru, sun, shifting painting. However, Bai Jie's fingertips began to flow with powerful array runes. The array runes covered the scroll in front of him. The scroll slowly unfurled, and a mysterious star chart appeared before everyone's eyes. This star chart was deep and bright. It seemed to cover an entire galaxy and encompass the entire world. Sumeru stealing the sky. Sun shifting painting. Bai Jie shouted. The Sumeru sun shifting painting gradually faded. However, the stars in the sky had already changed. The Sumeru sun shifting painting's star chart had unknowingly changed from a clear sky to a bright starry sky. Everyone felt as if they had suddenly appeared in the vast universe. The heavy opening ruins cauldron phantom smashed into the starry sky. The Big Dipper in the sky shifted slightly. It formed a purple beam of light that shot out and collided with the opening ruins cauldron phantom. Wong. The opening ruins cauldron let out a violent hum. The sound was crisp and heavy. It was like a morning bell that swept out. The terrifying sound waves tumbled out like an avalanche. When the other races outside the opening ruins cauldron saw this, they were shocked. They panicked and wanted to escape, but they were unable to escape the powerful force produced by the clash between the opening ruins cauldron and the Sumeru sun shifting painting. Pung, pung, pung. Countless other races were struck by the aura produced by the opening ruins cauldron and the Sumeru sun shifting painting. Their bodies exploded. Even their souls did not escape. However, the people from the alchemy cauldron sect were not spared either. They were protected by the opening ruins cauldron. Although they did not die, when the opening ruins cauldron let out a loud chime, the people who opened the opening ruins cauldron felt as if they were inside a giant bell. The rumbling sound of the bell was like heavenly thunder that exploded in everyone's ears. Everyone screamed and covered their ears. Those below the nascent soul stage all had their ears ringing. They could no longer hear clearly. Poochie, Poochie. Countless people could not withstand the sound. Their ears were already bleeding. Blood spewed out of their mouths as they fell into a coma. Kumu was shocked. At this moment, he had to protect hundreds of thousands of human survivors. There was no way he could use his full strength. In just one exchange, the human side had suffered great losses. If he used his full strength, even if the humans were not slaughtered by the other races, they would perish under the powerful sound waves of the opening ruins cauldron. Kumu had his misgivings, but Bai Jie did not have any. Even though hundreds of other races had been killed in the exchange, he did not even frown. To him, as long as he could take down Kumu, sacrificing tens of thousands of other races would not be a problem. Bai Jie sneered. The strength of a Tao artifact lies in its user. You're now just a soul. Even if you control the opening ruins cauldron, you cannot use its full strength. How are you going to fight me? Kumu's heart sank. If Bai Jie did not have the Sumeru sun shifting diagram, he could still use the opening ruins cauldron to stop Bai Jie. However, now that Bai Jie had the Sumeru sun shifting diagram, with Bai Jie's cultivation, the Tao artifact in his hand could unleash far more power than Kumu. Not to mention you. Even if Muyu came personally, he would not be my match with the Array Hall. The opening ruins cauldron and the Array Hall were used by Jian Ying and Chun Feng to guard the array core of the third heaven array. Do you really think I do not know that? Bai Jie's words made Ku Mu's heart sink. With the opening ruins cauldron, he might be able to restrain a great ascension stage expert. However, if he faced Bai Jie, who also had a Dao artifact, he had no chance of winning. Is there really no other way? Daoist Chu Buka sighed. Tan Qingchuan said, "It's a pity that I sealed the soul transference diagram. Otherwise," Kumu shook his head. The soul transference diagram is a powerful evil item. It is second only to a Dao artifact. Anyone who comes into contact with it will not have a good ending. Even if it is not sealed, we cannot use it because it will also cause huge casualties. Decades ago, when Kumu went to the gate of hell to snatch the soul transference diagram, he was injured by the soul transference diagram's power. At that time, he did not have the opening ruins cauldron to protect him. He was unable to deal with the soul transference diagram, which led to his cultivation regressing to the body integration stage. Kumu knew this very well. Boom! The Sumeru Sun shifting diagram once again emitted a powerful aura. It slammed into the defensive array pattern formed by the opening ruins cauldron. It was as if it had struck the hearts of all humans. Many people vomited blood again and fell into despair. Kumu had to protect hundreds of thousands of people. He could not use his full strength. Chapter 1144. The opening cauldron and the Sumeru Sun shifting diagram clashed, and the destructive power was considerable. Bai Jie had already ordered the other foreign races to retreat 1,000 miles away from the Pill Cauldron sect to await further instructions to avoid being injured by the two Dao artifacts. Withered Tree did not rashly attack again, but the stars in the sky lit up again. Every beam of starlight connected with each other and fell from the universe, smashing onto the opening cauldron, causing it to shake nonstop. "Get everyone ahead to the array sect, quick," Withered Tree said in a deep voice. However, Master Lu had already jumped out from the crowd and said anxiously, "The teleportation array's connection has been cut off." Bai Jie came prepared and sealed this void, preventing the teleportation array from being activated. "Haha, Withered Tree, Evergreen, you are already turtles in a jar. Normally, I would not be able to cut off the teleportation array between the Pill Cauldron sect and the Array sect, but now that I have the Sumeru Sun shifting diagram, this entire region is within my Dao artifact. How can you leave?" Bai Jie's words caused the humans in the opening cauldron to feel even more despair. Boom! The starlight of the Sumeru Sun shifting diagram once again pierced through the galaxy and smashed onto the opening cauldron's ruins. This time, even Withered Tree's face turned pale. Cracks appeared on the runes above the opening cauldron. Boom! Under the continuous impact of the starlight, the cracks on the runes above the opening cauldron grew larger and larger. It was already at the point where it was about to collapse. It probably could not take another hit. Bai Jie laughed. "Withered Tree, Evergreen, I think you should already understand that under such circumstances, you are no match for me. If you still do not surrender, then the next thing I will kill is all of the human race." Withered Tree said coldly, "We humans will never surrender to you foreign races. Even if we die, we will drag you down with us." Tan Xingchuan, Daoist Chu Buku, Wu Ming, and Jiang Yu, who had just refined the corpse race to reach the Great Ascension stage, stood beside Withered Tree. Their expressions were filled with determination. Daoist Yuanda and a few other tribulation passing stage experts stood behind them. None of them wanted to retreat. Countless humans below looked at Bai Jie, who was looking down at them from above, and did not retreat either. Although they were frightened by Bai Jie's aura, none of them wanted to surrender. After they joined Sword Shadow, they understood what their duty was. To them, being enslaved by the foreign races was equivalent to never being able to rise, and death was "We will not surrender." Daoist Yuanda shouted, "We will not surrender. We will not surrender." Hundreds of thousands of people raised their arms and cheered. Everyone's face was filled with determination. At this critical moment, no one wanted to retreat. They all knew what happened to the other humans who had fallen into the hands of the alien race. That place was like hell, and they didn't want to go there again. For a time, The entire Pill Cauldron School was filled with the heroic spirit of facing death with equanimity. They all wanted to spill their blood on the battlefield so that they could die a worthy death. The passion of hundreds of thousands of people formed a vigorous life force that soared into the sky and struck Bai Jie's body. Bai Jie's godlike appearance began to slowly change, gradually becoming incomparably ugly. His mouth was sharp, and his majestic posture had long since disappeared. The Spiritas were unable to endure the exuberant vitality. Bai Jie's face had become incomparably sinister. However, unlike the other Han clansmen, he did not appear to be affected by the life force like the other Han clansmen. Although he had returned to his original form, his presence did not weaken at all. Since you can't wait to die, I'll grant you your wish. Bai Jie's hand stirred up red runes once again. The runes sank into the vast starry sky, covering the entire starry sky. The starlight once again gathered at a point and blasted towards the cracked ruins of the ruins opening cauldron. Everyone understood that the ruins opening cauldron could no longer withstand this attack. Boom! The ruins opening cauldron's runes shattered like tiles as they floated in the air. It also made everyone understand that they had lost the thing that protected them. They would either die or be enslaved. Do you still want to put up a resistance? Bai Jie smiled contemptuously. The starlight in the sky gathered once again and aimed at everyone from the Pill Cauldron School. This time, even Deadwood was unable to protect them. There were too many people from the Pill Cauldron School. Even the ruins opening cauldron could not accommodate hundreds of thousands of people. Whoosh! Purple starlight shot down from the sky and aimed at Deadwood with a destructive force. Bai Jie's goal was very clear. Once he killed Deadwood's soul, these people would no longer be able to resist. But at that moment, two auras, one black and one white, suddenly appeared above the starry sky. The two auras appeared so abruptly that it seemed to tear the entire starry sky apart, causing a crack to appear in the starry sky. We humans will never surrender to maggots like you. Mu Yu's voice was like rolling thunder that resounded throughout the world. It stirred everyone's spirits. The azure-colored robe fluttered in an ordinary manner. However, it was like a sharp sword that tore through the Sumeru Sun shifting diagram seal. It was like a beam of light in the dark night, appearing in front of everyone. It's Mu Yu. Mu Yu is here. Everyone's shriveled chests gradually puffed up as they cheered and jumped for joy. They looked excitedly at the youth in the sky. Chaos yin and yang floated around Mu Yu's body, resonating with the chaos yin and yang controlled by Deadwood. The four chaos yin and yang rapidly spun, forming a powerful and vast aura that forcefully withstood the Sumeru Sun shifting diagram's attack. Mu Yu. Bai Jie looked at Mu Yu with a venomous gaze. His sharp vertical eyes glowed with a hateful light, as if he wanted to pierce through Mu Yu. However, Mu Yu only looked at Bai Jie coldly. His aura was restrained, making it impossible for anyone to see how deep he was. Mu Yu. Deadwood looked at Mu Yu in shock. He felt that something strange had happened to Mu Yu, but he couldn't pinpoint exactly what the change was. I'm sorry I'm late, said Mu Yu. Deadwood said firmly, since the Cauldron of Ruins can no longer protect everyone, we will fight to the death with the aliens. Fight to the death. Fight to the death. All of the humans roared. Their passions surged, and their blood boiled. Mu Yu looked at the hot-blooded self-cultivators below. His heart was touched. The people he wanted to save were none other than those who hadn't forgotten their race and dignity. For these people, he was willing to stand up and fight Bai Jie one last time. Fight to the death? With just the two of you? The two of you can't use your Dao artifacts. How are you going to fight me? Bai Jie laughed disdainfully. A Dao artifact could be relied on by a powerful force. The power it contained was enough to determine the direction of the war. Mu Yu and Deadwood were unable to use the Array Hall and the Cauldron of Ruins. Against Bai Jie, who had the Sumeru Sun-changing picture, they had no chance of winning. Do you really think there's no one among us humans? A steady voice came from afar. The voice was resolute, but it was also gentle and refined. It made everyone pause once again. Cheng Yen stood in the air and appeared beside Mu Yu. I'm afraid I hate you pests the most. The dazzling fiery light covered the sky, as if it had ignited the stars. It made the starlight in the sky dim slightly. Luo Shang's flame-red figure also appeared. The third heaven will not allow filthy races to touch it. A heavy aura rushed over. Xiangnan coldly walked over from afar. With every step he took, the ground trembled and the air seemed to freeze. Jian Ying and Chun Feng's 4 disciples had all gathered. Cheng Yin, Luo Shang, Xiangnan, and Mu Yu. All the humans in the cultivation world recognized Jian Ying and Chun Feng's 4 disciples. Their appearances had long been known by the world. Now that they were all gathered together, it brought endless hope to everyone. You're all here? Then let's catch you all in one fell swoop. Bai Jie coldly said. White Devil, why are you in such a hurry? Flower petals floated over from the stars. They fluttered in the air and seemed to have a special charm. This familiar entrance stunned the hundreds of thousands of humans. Shimen Wuji, White Devil, you're so ugly. How can you come out to meet people? Wang Wan lightly stepped forward and leaned against Shimen Wuji. Her enchanting figure was extremely dazzling in the air. Even the stars could not compare to her. I'm not late. Very good. Chu Xiachi slowly stepped out of the void with a straw in his mouth. He crossed his arms and lazily looked at Bai Jie. Gu Yitian slowly walked over without saying a word. There were no cultivation fluctuations on his body, but the 2 broken swords behind him were especially eye-catching. No one dared to look down on these 2 broken swords, because everyone in the cultivation world knew who he was to be able to carry these 2 broken swords on his back. The sudden appearance of the 7 most famous people of the cultivation world's younger generation made many people see hope. These people's auras were shocking. They were all in the Great Ascension realm. Are you all here to die? Bai Jie coldly looked at these people, but his expression did not change. There's also us. Xiao ran, and Yu Mo appeared on the side. Yu Mo's entire body was shrouded in shadows. No one could see her true body, but her graceful bearing left a deep impression. Shadowless and shadowless clans, you still choose to be traitors? Bai Jie sneered. Xiao Ran slightly shook her head. We're not traitors because we were born in the 3rd heaven of the human race. The most important thing is that you shouldn't have destroyed our great water city. Umo also coldly said, from the moment you attacked us, we were in a situation where we wouldn't rest until we were dead. Whether it was the Shadowless clan or the Shadowless clan, their territories had been attacked by the foreign races. They had already suffered heavy losses. What else? Bai Jie did not seem to be anxious at all. He was still waiting. There's also me. Xiao Shui's figure also appeared in the air. Her eyes were flowing as she slowly walked to Mu Yu's side. Her body was flowing with mist, hazy and elegant. She had also completed the fusion and became a Great Ascension realm cultivator. There's also me who wants revenge. Tian Ran also jumped and landed beside Mu Yu. At this time, Tian Ran had also stepped into the Great Ascension realm. There's also Dummy who wants to swat flies. Chapter 1145. Originally, there were only 4 Great Ascension stage cultivators in the entire human race, but now there were so many of them. The hundreds of thousands of people in the Pill Cauldron sect were excited. They understood that the human race was not absolutely weak. Kumu, Chu Byuku, Venerable and I Lei, Wu Ming, and Gu Jiangyu also stood out. There were a total of 18 Great Ascension stage experts. A huge pressure swept through the sky above the Pill Cauldron sect like a majestic tide, surging violently. Disciple, are you okay? Chu Byuku greeted Chu Xiachi in surprise. He grabbed Chu Xiachi's arm and looked up and down. I'm fine. Fortunately, I came back in time. Chu Xiachi chuckled. Wu Ming walked to Gu Yitian and asked in surprise, when did you break through? Although Gu Yitian did not have any cultivation fluctuations, Wu Ming could see Gu Yitian's cultivation at a glance. Gu Yitian glanced at Mu Yu and said, 5 days ago. Since he came back, he stayed at Luochen Mountain with Qing Yin and the others. He was about to step into the Great Ascension stage. He only lacked an opportunity. 5 days ago, Muyu returned to Luochen Mountain and found him. Using Yu Qinquan's domain, he showed him how to look at the heavenly Tao rules. With the help of Muyu's powerful Yu Qinquan domain, he comprehended his own rules and successfully stepped into the great ascension stage. Then you should return my sword to me, Wu Ming said. Gu Yiqian untied the broken sword that belonged to Wu Ming on his back and returned it to Wu Ming. Wu Ming stopped holding his broken sword, and his aura skyrocketed again. But Bai Jie still had no fear. He stood alone under the starry sky and looked down at everyone in the Pill Cauldron sect. Since you're all here, I'll deal with you all together. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As soon as Bai Jie's voice fell, a total of 50 Great Ascension Stage experts appear behind him. The appearance of these 50 Great Ascension Stage experts made the atmosphere even more oppressive. Hundreds of thousands of people felt incomparable palpitations. The Great Ascension Stage experts made them deeply feel powerless, including Bai Jie. The other party had a total of 51 Great Ascension Stage experts. Obviously, this was not the full strength of the Spiritas. There were still many Great Ascension Stage experts guarding Sword Shadow City. But even so, Bai Jie mobilized so many people to gather 50 Dishang Stage Masters to encircle and suppress the Pill Cauldron School. He had already expected the obstruction of Muyu and others. Many self-cultivators of a human clan were suppressed by the momentum of these Great Vehicle Stage cultivators. There were only 18 Great Vehicle Stage cultivators on the human clan's side, and one of them was the unfathomable Bai Jie, who had a Taoist artifact. This battle was not evenly matched at all. Ku Mu said in a deep voice, Muyu, you should have attacked Sword Shadow City instead of coming here. I've been there, Muyu said. Can't get in. Deadwood asked, puzzled. Muyu looked at Bai Jie and said, This is Sword Shadow City. What do you mean? Dead Tree asked in confusion. Bai Jie laughed again. Withered Tree Evergreen. Do you really understand the Sumeru sun changing diagram? Sumeru sun changing diagram. Deadwood seemed to have thought of something and said, Is it the Sumeru sun changing diagram that protected Sword Shadow City and sent you here? Muyu nodded. Yes, Mount Meru stealing the heavens and swapping the sun. The passage of time and the passage of time. This Tao treasure is very powerful. Other than killing Bai Jie, there is no other way. Then we can only fight. Rolling dragon aura swept over from the horizon. It was majestic and domineering, and its momentum was like a rainbow. The aura of supremacy caused the strange races to involuntarily shiver. The Azure Dragon Monster King stood proudly in the void and looked at the strange races with his hands behind his back. The contempt in his eyes was not concealed. Not only him, but the White Ape Monster King, the Wan Phoenix Monster King, the Sea Monster King, and the Sand Eagle Monster King were all gathered here. The aura of the 5 Monster Kings caused the entire atmosphere to become turbulent again. Bai Jie sneered. I thought you monster clans were already too busy to take care of yourselves. The Azure Dragon Monster King said majestically, You, a little bastard of the Soul Clan, dare to be impudent in front of me. When I was roaming the world, you were not even a speck of dust. So what? The winner takes all. If you want to go against the heavenly enforcers, you should be prepared to be beheaded. Bai Jie said contemptuously. The Azure Dragon Monster King nodded slightly at Muyu, and Muyu nodded in response. The Sand Eagle Monster King coldly stared at Xiangnan. You should return my heart to me. As long as the Sand Eagle Monster King's heart had spiritual power, he would not die. In fact, his cultivation would not even be lost. However, with his heart in Xiangnan's hands, he could not unleash his full strength. Muyu said, Senior brother, if we want to kill the strange races, we have to rely on him. Xiangnan coldly snorted. A cold light shot toward the Sand Eagle Monster King. The heart had already returned to the Sand Eagle Monster King's hand. I don't need your heart anymore. Muyu coldly shouted to the people beside him, 1 against 2. Everyone, be careful. I can fight 7 at once. The White Ape Monster King clenched his fist so hard that it shook the sky. I specialize in beating up Soul Clan bastards. Kill! Kill! Violent roars shook the sky. Everyone's bloodlust was completely aroused. The void was severely distorted. All the great vehicle stage cultivators turned into phantoms and charged toward the strange races. The power of their domains soared into the sky from everyone. The 50 great vehicle stage cultivators of the strange races also roared crazily and collided with the great vehicle stage cultivators of the human race. The Sumeru sun shifting diagram enveloped everyone. Everyone seemed to be in the starry sky. The collision of domains caused the entire starry sky to tremble slightly. The light of the stars was even distorted. All the self-cultivators below were also shouting. Under the leadership of Zhuge Xiaosheng, who had just returned with a few monster kings, they fought against the army of the strange races. The war was about to break out. The aura of the 5 heavenly swords soared into the sky. Even the vast starry sky could not stop the power of the heavenly swords. The heavenly swords stirred the starry sky. Tens of thousands of sword chi swept across the strange races. Domain, universe origin pursuit. Qingyin's figure flashed. Each of his heavenly swords enveloped 3 members of the Moon Clan. His erosion cleansing sword flashed with a cold light. The sword light flashed in the starry sky. He faced the 3 ugly monsters with fleshy wings and horns. The 3 monsters with fleshy wings and horns were overflowing with colorful light. The light blasted toward Qingyin. However, their spells seemed to have lost their direction in Qingyin's universe origin pursuit. All the spells that were attacking Qingyin were forcibly controlled by Qingyin. They were directed toward the monsters. A Red Moon Clan member roared in anger. The horn in front of his chest had been cut off by Qingyin's heavenly sword. His entire body was also smashed into pieces by Qingyin's heavenly sword. Domain, Earth-spreading sand release. Xiangnan faced 2 members of the Wings clan and 1 member of the Ghost clan. His stargazing sword swept across. It was incomparably heavy. The yellow sword chi was buried in the yellow sand. The 2 members of the Wings clan spread their huge black wings. Sharp claws extended from their huge wings as they clawed towards Xiangnan. However, their wings were instantly split open by the yellow sand sword chi of Xiangnan's stargazing sword. The sword chi covered their wings. The Wings clan members that were originally like steel were gradually petrified. They turned into stone and finally exploded, disintegrating into yellow sand. Domain, Great Fury Burning Heaven. Luo Shang's sword chi was filled with blazing heat. He faced 1 member of the Corpse clan and 2 members of the Bone clan. His burning heaven sword flew wildly, illuminating the faces of the Corpse clan and Bone clan members red. Flames burned in the sky. His entire person was like a veritable god of fire. One of the Corpse clan members had already turned into corpse chi that filled the sky. However, his corpse chi domain collided with the actual flame domain. The stinking corpse chi that filled the sky was all ignited by the flames. The Corpse clan member screamed in pain. The corpse chi that filled the sky was incinerated, and the Corpse clan member died. Domain, Life and Death dominates the universe. Mu Yu's heaven sword circled around 3 members of the Soul clan. The Shadow Clone sword was overflowing with vitality, causing the 3 members of the Soul clan to be completely at a disadvantage. His eyes were suffused with black and white light. The black and white light intertwined on the sword chi. The sword chi covered the sky and earth. It split into 2 and directly blasted onto the Soul clan members. The Soul clan members' expressions changed when they saw this endless sword chi. Vitality was the nemesis of soul power. One of them had his wrist swept by Mu Yu's sword chi. Vitality invaded his arm, and his vitality rapidly increased. In an instant, the Soul clan member exploded. The Great Ascension Realm's Soul clan member was dead. The 4 of them were stronger than the others. They each relied on their heaven sword to suppress the 3 Great Ascension Realm Soul clan members. This was because they had to take care of Qiao Shui, Tian Ran, Gu Yitian, and Jiang Yu, who had just stepped into the Great Ascension Realm. It was still quite difficult for them to face 2 Great Ascension Realm experts alone. Not only the 4 of them, Even the monster kings were restraining the three great ascension realm experts. Kumu, Tan Qingchuan, and the others were heading towards Baijie. They only needed to delay Baijie and let Mu Yu and the other monster kings kill the other Soul Clan members. At that time, they would be able to deal with Baijie together. The unique and righteous. Green Dragon Monster King's domain was the strongest. His domain covered the three great Ascension Realms Soul Clan members. A domineering aura instantly caused the three Soul Clan members' expressions to change. Green Dragon Monster King was an old antique of the third celestial layer. How could his strength be looked down upon by ordinary Soul Clan members? In Green Dragon Monster King's domain, the three Soul Clan members felt their own insignificance. Facing the might of a Monster King, their domain was weakened by 30%. They couldn't even display their full strength. Bang! 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 The three Soul Clan members were instantly swept by Green Dragon Monster King's powerful aura and were blasted back. In the process of flying back, they had already exploded into pieces. You want to kill us? You're still too inexperienced. Chapter 1146. Monster King Azure Dragon. The Sumeru Sun-Shifting Portrait is a domain that restrains great vehicle stage cultivators. How can you intimidate all of us by yourself? Baijie's Dao artifact directly restrained Monster King Azure Dragon's ability. Even Monster King Azure Dragon frowned slightly. However, Monster King Azure Dragon's strength was not only because of his domain, but also because of his domineering cultivation. Bang! Monster King Azure Dragon's fist smashed another bone race person into pieces. That bone race person was killed by Monster King Azure Dragon before he could even release his domain. However, what shocked Monster King Azure Dragon and the others was that the starlight of the Sumeru Sun-Shifting Portrait actually emitted countless starlight and reformed the bone race person's shattered body. That bone race person was not injured at all. Can't be killed. Monster King White Ape also tore apart the body of a winged race person. However, the torn body quickly reformed under the influence of the starlight. The mutated race people killed by Mu Yu and his senior brothers all recovered under the cover of the starlight. Dummy swatted flies. Swatted flies. Dummy's body became extremely huge. He was unstoppable on the battlefield. He swatted anyone he saw. His terrifying aspect was even more eye-catching. Dummy's attack was very simple. He did not use any domain ability, but he just used the power of a great vehicle stage cultivator. He swatted down, and a soul race person was immediately crushed into powder. However, the starlight bloomed again and reformed the soul race people that Dummy had swatted to death. Can't be killed by swatting flies, Dummy said naively. Mu Yu's Shadow Clone Sword also swallowed a great vehicle stage mutated race person and turned him into Death Chi. Then, that soul race person revealed his original form in front of him, as if nothing had happened. In the Sumeru Sun-Shifting Portrait, all of us divine race people are immortal. How can you go against us? Hun Kuei sneered at Mu Yu. Hun Kuei was the strongest among the soul race people. His soul technique was restrained by Mu Yu. He led two of his own soul race people to fight Mu Yu, but Mu Yu still killed one of them. However, the person who was killed quickly recovered and could not be killed at all. Mu Yu and the others' hearts sank. If the mutated race people could not be killed in the starry sky, then what should they do? At the same time, all the enslaved humans on the three continents raised their heads in bewilderment. The sky above every city had been transformed into a vast starry sky, and the aura of every human was emitting faint rays of light that entered the starry sky. These enslaved people were actually drawn in by Baijie's powerful soul technique, becoming the source of the Sumeru Sun-Shifting diagram. As long as the human race in the city did not perish, the Sumeru Sun-Shifting diagram would have tens of thousands of energy to maintain the lives of the foreign races. The alien race in the starry sky was equivalent to consuming the lives of all the enslaved humans. In a vast starry sky, The confrontation between the human Grand Ascension stage and the foreign race Grand Ascension stage was clearly reflected in the eyes of all the enslaved people. They were tied together by the Sumeru sun-changing diagram, and they knew exactly what was happening in the starry sky. We can't win like this. A white-haired old man sighed. He looked at the lifeless young man beside him and was filled with regret. All the enslaved humans knew the truth of the matter, but the human Deshang stage masters in the starry sky did not know. The foreign races are too vicious. An old woman shook her head slightly. They had been forced to become livestock for the foreign races, and when they saw Mu Yu and the others appear to fight against the foreign races, their hearts were filled with a surge of blood, as if they had seen the hope of escaping the fate of being enslaved. But soon, the hot blood in their chests cooled down. This was because Bai Jie's methods were too despicable. He used all the enslaved humans as the foundation to provide a powerful strength for the Sumeru sun shifting diagram. Mu Yu and the others were not only fighting against the strange races, but they were also fighting against the people of the entire 3 continents. And just now, 7 people had already died. They had been used by Bai Jie to use the Sumeru sun shifting diagram to die in the place of the foreign races in the starry sky. Mu Yu and the others gathered together again with serious expressions on their faces. Just now, each of them had killed 7 Grand Ascension stage foreign beings, but these 7 foreign beings had come back to life again, as if they were maggots that could not be killed. What is the origin of this Sumeru sun shifting diagram? Why can't we kill it? Tan Qingchuan asked. Kumu shook his head. I only know that it is a very powerful Dao artifact, but every Dao artifact is quite special. If we do not control it, it is very difficult to know what is special about it. Mu Yu stared at the stars in the sky, pondered for a moment, and said, "Did you notice just now? Every time we killed a foreign race, one of the stars in the sky disappeared, as if these stars were dying in the place of the foreign races." The others did not notice this strangeness. Everyone was focused on fighting the Deshang stage foreign races and did not pay attention to the changes in the starry sky. But Mu Yu had been observing this starry sky from the beginning. With his powerful insight, every star in the Sumeru sun shifting diagram was in his perception. Does this mean that we have to destroy all the stars in order to completely kill them? Azure Dragon Monster King asked. Everyone looked at the starry sky. There were at least tens of millions of stars in front of them. Did they have to kill these foreign races tens of millions of times? White Ape Monster King rubbed his fists and his knuckles creaked. Then let's kill them completely. We are not afraid of them. Don't be rash. The other party is also at the Deshang stage. Can you afford to kill them tens of millions of times? Luan Phoenix Monster King glared at White Ape Monster King. If we want to kill them, we have to leave this starry sky. The White Realm connects all the foreign races with the stars, and we can't cut off this connection at all, Kumu said. Mu Yu's eyes were filled with array patterns. He looked at the stars in the sky, and a compass suddenly appeared in his hand. The compass flowed with array patterns, emitting powerful array patterns that disappeared into the galaxy. He suddenly realized and exclaimed, "We can't kill them." "Why?" Qingyan asked. Mu Yu said solemnly, "Because these tens of millions of stars represent all the enslaved humans in the 3rd layer of the continent. We just killed 7 foreign races, which is equivalent to killing 7 people." The White Realm used the Sumeru sun-changing diagram to exchange the lives of these Deshang stage foreign races. What? Everyone was stunned. They never thought that things would turn out like this. So if we kill these foreign races tens of millions of times, all the enslaved humans in the 3rd layer of the continent will be killed, right? Qingyan asked solemnly. If everyone in the 3rd layer of heaven was killed by them, how could they talk about saving the human race? I'm afraid so. Mu Yu looked at the heart questioning guide. It triggered waves of mysterious array patterns. Back then, it was the heart questioning guide that guided him to find the others in the ancient battlefield. It was also the heart questioning guide that brought them back to the falling dust mountain. It was also the heart questioning guide that allowed him to see the true nature of things. He had to make good use of the heart questioning guide. Haha, Have you already guessed it? Yes, I have to admit that the human race has a few tough bones. However, if you kill one of us, I will let another human die in my place. This time, how are you going to do it? Bai Jie sneered. He did not seem to be in a hurry. Instead, he looked at Mu Yu and the others like a cat playing with a mouse. What do we do now? If we don't kill them, how are we going to fight them? Tan Qingchuan asked. No one could give a specific answer. Bai Jie's methods were too cruel. He had practically sealed off all the escape routes of the human race. As long as they killed everyone in the third layer of the continent, they would be able to kill the foreign races. Mu Yu and the others could not afford to pay such a price. However, Bai Jie did not give them any chance to think. The 50 Deshang stage foreign races were bound by the light of the stars. They were practically immortal. Even if they were killed, they would revive. Each of the foreign races roared even more ferociously. They let go of their limbs and fought with their lives on the line. The battle in the sky became frantic again. However, unlike before, Mu Yu and the others' hands and feet were bound this time. They could not use their full strength. Dummy, stop smacking them to death. Smacking them to death is like smacking a person to death. Tian Ran shouted. Dummy scratched his head. He was hundreds of feet tall. At this moment, he stretched out 2 fingers and pinched a bone race person like a bug. Just as he was about to crush the bone race person, he heard Tian Ran's words and stopped in time. Then, little Tian Ran, tell Dummy what to do. Dummy asked innocently. Dummy, go catch the big white ghost. Little Commander pointed at Bai Jie and shouted. Dummy turned his huge body and glanced at Bai Jie, who was standing in the sky. Then, he threw the bone race person in his hand and jumped towards Bai Jie. Dummy killed the big white ghost. Dummy's hand brought a huge rumbling sound. The powerful force knocked away the corpse race person that was fighting with Xiao Shui. Then he slapped towards Bai Jie. Bai Jie sneered. The stars in the sky gathered into a huge palm and went towards Dummy. The 2 huge palms collided in the sky. Suddenly, there was a huge rumbling sound. Shockwaves rolled out and made everyone take 2 steps back. Dummy's body was also knocked away. Bang, bang, bang. Dummy fell a few times in the void. He sat in the void and touched the back of his head. He muttered, Dummy is fine. Dummy is fine. This little white ghost is so strong. Dummy can't kill it. Dummy was very strong. Back then, he had killed Yuhan Sha. However, he was knocked away by Bai Jie. Bai Jie's strength was at a level that made people look up to him. Mu Yu knew that this could not go on. If he wanted to kill the mutated, he had to break the Sumeru Sun changing painting's territory. However, they were all in the Sumeru Sun changing painting. Bai Jie had sealed the Sumeru Sun changing painting, not allowing them to leave the sky. Bang! In the distance, Gu Tian was also hit by a bone race person and was sent flying. He had just stepped into the Deshang stage and was not proficient in mastering his domain. It was still too difficult for him to fight against 2 people. Fortunately, he was a body cultivator. Even after taking a palm strike from the bone race, his body did not collapse. Not only Gu Tian, but old Jianyu's body was also full of cracks. He relied on refining the corpse race person to become his twin and stepped into the Great Ascension stage. However, he met Shi Xiu Luo. When Shi Xiu Luo saw that his brother had become old Jianyu's twin, he almost choked. With Shi Xiu Luo's cultivation, it was difficult for old Jianyu to gain an advantage. Chapter 1147. In the starry sky, saber beams, sword shadows, and domains collided. The third firmament human was already being beaten back. The situation was getting worse. As Mu Yu dodged Han Kuei's attacks, he quickly pondered. He had to find a flaw in the Sumeru sun-shifting diagram. However, the Sumeru sun-shifting diagram was a powerful Dao artifact after all. It was different from other Dharma treasures. The weakness of a Dao artifact was almost impossible to break. Otherwise, the Array Hall and the Ruins opening cauldron would have been able to hold off the spiritlings for so long. Soul Technique Luo Yin. Overlord Demonic Warhammer. Han Kuei roared as the blood-colored soul bead beside him exploded. The fragments formed a 1,000-feet-long warhammer in the air. The warhammer was completely red, as though it was dyed red by blood. When it smashed into the air, the light it formed distorted. When the warhammer came down, it was mixed with the monstrous might of a domain. Waves surged and sealed off Muyu's path of retreat. Muyu kept retreating. The shadow clone sword forced the other two spiritlings back. The chaotic yin and yang transformed into a phantom that faced Han Kuei's huge warhammer. Boom! Muyu had misgivings. He had already switched from offense to defense. However, Han Kuei did not have that many misgivings. He became crazier as he fought. The warhammer was as heavy as Mount Tai. When it smashed into the chaotic yin and yang, even the chaotic yin and yang trembled slightly. Hua! The chaotic yin and yang around Muyu was scattered by the Overlord Warhammer. The Warhammer continued smashing towards Muyu with a blood-color shadow. However, at that moment, the chaotic yin and yang that was smashed apart suddenly collided with the truth-seeking guide in Muyu's hand. Wong! A strange power was emitted by the truth-seeking guide and spread out in all directions. The entire starry sky seemed to come to a standstill. Everyone's movements stopped at a certain moment. It was as though time had frozen. Even Han Kuei's warhammer stopped in midair when it was smashing down halfway. Muyu looked at the truth-seeking guide in his hand in surprise. He had never let the chaotic yin and yang touch the truth-seeking guide. As for what it was, he was not very sure. But just now, when the primal yin and yang collided with the heart-questioning guide, the heart-questioning guide actually absorbed the primal yin and yang. At this moment, the 8 trigrams in the center of the guide of self-questioning spun faster and faster. 2 shadows, one black and one white, rushed out from the guide of self-questioning. Not only that, Muyu's chaotic yin and yang also chased after the 2 shadows, galloping happily. It was another pair of chaos yin and yang. The heart-seeking guide is actually a Tao artifact. Muyu was shocked. The fact that the heart-seeking guide was a Tao Ever since artifact
the heart-seeking guide
out of
was
his
in his
expectations, it had always been in a sealed state. He had never thought that this little compass had anything to do with a Tao item. However, his own chaotic yin and yang accidentally touched the heart-seeking guide and awakened the chaotic yin and yang contained within the heart-seeking guide. Little black and little white were chasing after the warm chaotic yin and yang around Muyu, which made Muyu extremely shocked. Little Shuai, who was on Muyu's shoulder, said in surprise, "Right, how could I forget that the primal yin and yang are Tao artifacts?" Everyone there was frozen in time, but only little Shuai and Muyu were safe. Little Shuai jumped and landed on the heart-seeking guide's primal yin and yang. He stepped on the heart-seeking guide's primal yin and yang and giggled. When the 2 Tao artifacts, primal yin and yang, touched, something unbelievable happened. It was like time had stopped. Muyu already knew this when he encountered the open ruins cauldron, but now, the battle in space had stopped. This was something Muyu had not expected. However, Muyu did not dare act rashly because he knew that the reason the primal yin and yang had stopped time was inseparable from the balance between them. If Muyu went to kill White World now, any power fluctuation would break this balance. It would be enough to make White World react. Master actually left behind a Tao artifact, but how do I use this Tao artifact? Muyu's mind raced. Soon, Little Black and Little White conveyed the meaning of the heart-seeking guide's primal yin and yang. The heart-seeking guide could help them find the mutated tribe's true body. The Sumeru sun-shifting painting actually swapped the mutated tribe's true body with a star. Every mutated tribe member was bound to a human's life. However, the mutated tribe member's true body was hidden among the stars in the sky. As long as the star was destroyed, the connection between the mutated tribe members and the Sumeru sun-shifting painting could be severed, and they would be completely killed. The direction of the heart is the guidance. I understand now. Muyu had comprehended the heart-seeking guide's ability. The heart-seeking guide was used to help Muyu find all the people who were lost in the ancient battlefield. At that time, Muyu relied on his imagination to determine the location of Qingyan and the others. Now, if he wanted to find the mutated tribe member's true body, he could use the same method to do it. He looked at the faces of the outsiders, and in an instant, their faces were firmly memorized by him, flashing through his mind continuously. Soon, the heart-questioning guide began to gradually flicker, emitting streaks of green light. These green lights were like comets, dragging long tails as they rushed towards the stars in the starry sky. A total of 50 stars were all covered in a layer of dazzling green light by the heart-seeking guide's light. This is the mutated tribe's true body. Muyu's spirit was lifted. He had already locked onto his target among the tens of millions of stars. Voila! Like stagnant flowing water, the heart-seeking guide's chaotic yin and yang returned to the heart-seeking guide. Meanwhile, Little Black and Little White also quickly rotated on Muyu's shadow swords. At the same time continued to flow. No one realized what had just happened. Muyu's actions had all happened in a flash. Only he could realize it. No one else had noticed that time had suddenly stopped. At this moment, Han Kuei's war hammer, which was originally suspended in midair, also fell towards Muyu. Muyu's shadow swords had already met the attack and sent the war hammer flying. He had already retreated. Everyone go and destroy those 50 green stars. As long as we destroy those 50 stars, we will be able to kill these mutated tribe members. Muyu shouted. Everyone raised their heads and looked towards the stars that had suddenly lit up in the distant starry sky. Previously, all the stars were shining the same. Other than the brightness, there was no difference. However, at this moment, 50 green starlights had lit up in the starry sky. They were very eye-catching and appeared rather abruptly. No one knew where these 50 green starlights came from. They also didn't know why Muyu had suddenly pointed out these 50 green starlights. However, Bai Jie's expression suddenly changed. He didn't expect Muyu to actually find the mutated tribe's true body among the tens of millions of stars. Although the Sumeru sun-shifting diagram was powerful, if it wanted to achieve the ability to steal the heavens and change lives, it would definitely wrap the mutated tribe members into a star. Originally, 50 stars weren't worth mentioning among the tens of millions of stars in the starry sky. He didn't expect Muyu to point out these stars one by one. Damn it, Bai Jie shouted angrily. He activated the Sumeru sun-shifting diagram in an attempt to hide the green dots on the 50 stars. However, he angrily discovered that these green dots seemed to have merged with the stars themselves. There was no way to get rid of them. Only the power of a Dao artifact could do this. Dao artifact? You used the array hall? No, the array hall's power isn't like this. What Dao artifact did you use? Bai Jie angrily rebuked. You want to know? Beg me. Little Shuai proudly placed his hands on his hips from Muyu's shoulder. Muyu was too lazy to respond to Bai Jie's words. He turned around and rushed towards the nearest green star. These stars were like dots of light in the sky. Even though they hadn't been destroyed in the previous exchange, after being imbued with the power of the soul-questioning attraction, they became extremely weak. They could be destroyed directly. Although the others didn't understand what was going on, when they saw the 50 green stars suddenly light up in the sky, they naturally knew that these 50 stars were extraordinary. If Muyu said that he wanted to destroy them, then it was necessary to destroy them. Everyone pushed back the mutated tribe members in front of them and turned to attack the green stars. Protect the stars, Bai Jie angrily shouted. All the strange races also reacted. Those stars were equivalent to their protective talismans. Once the protective talismans were broken, it would be impossible for them to let the enslaved humans of the third heavenly layer die in their place. Muyu was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. He reacted faster than anyone else. Bai Jie's figure also reached out to grab Muyu. He wanted to stop Muyu's actions, but Muyu was one step ahead of Bai Jie. He grabbed the star of the mutated tribe member called Soul Hound and crushed its green star. Bang! Roan Quan, who had been besieging Muyu with Han Kuei, suddenly trembled. The faint light that was connected to the Sumeru sun shifting diagram suddenly disappeared. A trace of panic appeared on its originally arrogant face. It had lost its connection with the Sumeru sun shifting diagram. Die for me. When Muyu destroyed Soul Hound, Bai Jie arrived beside Muyu. A powerful soul power covered the sky as it slammed down on Muyu's head. But Muyu was already prepared. His eyes suddenly shot out a black light. In the blink of an eye, a life and death domain appeared from his body. At such a close distance, no matter how fast Bai Jie's reaction was, it couldn't dodge. Shua! The aura of death slammed into Bai Jie's body. The life and death domain carried an endless suction force that wanted to pierce through Bai Jie. But what Muyu didn't expect was that when the aura of death enveloped Bai Jie, it didn't kill him like the other mutated tribe members. Bai Jie's body surged with soul power that scattered the light of Muyu's death. Bai Jie's strength was strong enough to block the terrifying killing power of Muyu's life and death domain. Muyu's life and death domain didn't affect Bai Jie at all. Bang! Chapter 1148. The three of you have blasphemed the dignity of our Sanchon Palace. You are no longer qualified to participate in the competition for the 9 Shin Immortals. You deserve death. This was Han Kuei's voice. He did not give Shimin Wuji and the others a chance to explain. He actually planned to kill them directly. Now that the Sanchon Palace had established the 5 Mountains Alliance and established their dignity, killing the extreme immortals was no big deal to them. As long as they casually found an excuse to kill a few people who could pose a threat, then the 9 Shin Immortals would be in the bag. Even if there were people who were not convinced, they could just kill them. The domain of the Great Vehicle Stage was intimidating. It was like a black cloud pressing down on the city, causing everyone's chest to tremble. They were so shocked that they could not control themselves and did not even dare to breathe loudly. People of the Great Vehicle Stage, Shimin Wuji and Wan Wan coldly looked at the terrifying pressure that was coming towards them. Their bodies already lit up with black and white lights. Their auras were like sharp swords in the earth-shattering pressure of Han Kuei. They rushed up with a loud bang and intimidated everyone else. The cultivation of Shimin Wuji and Wan Wan shocked all the cultivators present. The Golden Boy and Jade Girl of the evil sect having the strength of a Deshang stage was beyond their expectations. Boom! The terrifying domains collided with each other. Shimin Wuji and Wan Wan both frowned slightly. Han Kuei's strength was far stronger than theirs. Gu Yitian's expression turned cold. He had already grasped the other iron sword on his back. The ordinary iron sword flashed with a violent and arrogant sword intent, faintly helping Shimin Wuji and Wan Wan resist the oppression of Han Kuei. But at this moment, another aura of the Great Vehicle Stage suddenly exploded. In the blink of an eye, it was like a solid and heavy spear, piercing through the void and heading towards Han Kuei. Clang! Han Kuei dodged. Shimin Wuji and Wan Wan also flew back. An indifferent man in white was already standing in the same place. His figure was not tall, but it gave people an inexplicable sense of security. It was like a solid shield that people could rely on. Chengyan. The moment everyone saw Chengyan appear, they exclaimed. Now that the 4 disciples of Jian Ying and Chun Feng were well known in the cultivation world, they recognized Chengyan's identity at a glance. The aura of Chengyan's body was like a bright moon, illuminating the whole place. It was shocking. Killing people. Chengyan looked at Han Kuei indifferently. Han Kuei was very powerful to an extremely terrifying level. Even he felt a trace of fear. However, Chengyan wasn't afraid. He had already expected that the people from the Sanchon Palace would play tricks on him, and he was prepared to deal with them. If they really fought, it would be hard to say who would win. Han Kuei's eyes were filled with killing intent as he looked at Chengyan. All of Jian Ying and Chun Feng's disciples had to be killed. You people are disrespectful to the threefold palace. You don't deserve to be Shin Immortals. Han Kuei's words were extremely overbearing. He had absolute strength to say these words. Even if these words were baseless, no one dared to refute him. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Another 5 men in black robes and hoods appeared in the sky. The appearance of these 5 men once again set off a violent storm. 6 Great Vehicle Stage, 3 Palaces cultivators. Hundreds of thousands of cultivators looked at the people who were confronting each other in shock. In their impression, experts at the tribulation stage could already dominate a region, and they were existences that they revered. As for experts at the great vehicle stage, they were basically true gods. They were hundreds of times rarer than experts at the tribulation stage. However, so many experts at the great vehicle stage had suddenly appeared. The atmosphere instantly froze. No one dared to make a noise. They were the legendary great vehicle stage, existences that were revered by everyone. Don't even think about escaping today. Hun Kuei laughed loudly. With a wave of his hand, 6 terrifying domain powers instantly swept out. Buzz. However, at this moment, an explosive flame ignited the void, forcibly melting a hole in the void. A fiery red figure stood arrogantly in the void. The intense heat made everyone feel as if they were in a terrifying furnace. Sweat had already rolled down from their bodies and instantly evaporated. You rats from the threefold palace can't wait to die. Luo Shang's voice was arrogant and unruly. Boom! The entire ground shook violently, as if a giant beast was about to crawl out from the ground. Almost all the cultivators couldn't stand still. It was as if a huge pulling force was about to swallow them. Just as well. It'll save us a lot of trouble if we kill them directly. Xiang Nan stood on a gray stone on the ground. The stone was simple and solid. It was only 1 meter long, but it gave people the feeling that it was a giant. The space around the stone was rapidly collapsing and was about to collapse. The appearance of Xiang Nan and Luo Shang shocked all the cultivators once again. Sure enough, Jian Ying and Chun Feng's disciples were not people with an undeserved reputation. They had actually become top experts at the great vehicle stage. Chengyan looked at Luo Shang and Xiang Nan. His eyes flickered slightly, but he didn't say anything. The pressure of 11 great vehicle stage cultivators was like a stormy sea, surging violently. All the cultivators present felt their own insignificance. They were like leaves in the sea that could be swallowed up at Han Kuei. So, the 9 mystic people from the threefold palace plan, but destroying the people from the threefold palace was also their goal. Han Kuei looked coldly at Qingyan and the others and sneered. Without you, it doesn't matter who the 9 mystic immortals are. The 9 mystic immortals could fall into the hands of any extreme immortal, but they couldn't be controlled by these people. This was because when the other extreme immortals became the 9 mystic immortals, the threefold palace would be able to control them. However, they couldn't control Qingyan and the others. Therefore, they didn't plan to let Qingyan and the others enter the extreme immortal monument. So that's how it is. Qingyan looked indifferently at Han Kuei and said, "In front of so many people, you people from the threefold palace still dare to show yourselves. This is really unexpected." Once a cultivator's emotions were high, they would explode with a powerful vitality. This was a huge threat to the soul race. This was also one of the reasons why the soul race didn't dare to show themselves casually. However, Han Kuei sneered and said, "In front of the absolute pressure of us great ascension stage cultivators, do you think these cultivators can cheer? On the contrary, these several 100,000 cultivators will become our soul power source. It's more than enough to kill you." A glint flashed through Qingyan's eyes. "Why don't you try and see if you can still kill people now?" Han Kuei looked at Qingyan's tone and suddenly felt that something was wrong. He frowned and then sneered. "Do you think I don't dare?" Han Kuei waved his hand and white soul power blasted towards the several 100,000 cultivators closest to him. When those cultivators saw the terrifying soul power pouring towards them, they were already scared out of their wits. They wanted to scream in fear, but couldn't. The pressure of a great ascension stage cultivator made them feel like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. They couldn't resist. The divine soul power with monstrous killing intent instantly sank into the crowd. The soul power that was enough to flatten an entire mountain blasted onto the cultivators' bodies. But it disappeared like melting snow. How can this be? Han Kuei looked at all of this in shock and anger. As a great ascension stage cultivator, this palm strike was enough to destroy heaven and earth, but couldn't kill the people present. His attack was actually ineffective against the cultivators. Then, Han Kuei seemed to think of something and squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. He stared angrily at Cheng Yan. You actually found perfect river and mountain. A strong killing intent appeared in Cheng Yan's eyes. Now it's a fair fight. Luo Shang and Xiang then looked at each other and saw a trace of confusion in each other's eyes. They didn't understand what perfect river and mountain meant. When Xiao Ran, who was in the distance, heard the words perfect river and mountain, she was already startled. The Shadowless Clan and the Shadowless Clan had been hiding in the third heaven for thousands of years. They had been searching for perfect river and mountain, but they had never found it. They didn't expect that it would be found by Cheng Yan. Swish! Xiao Ran's figure had already disappeared. When she reappeared, she had already landed on Cheng Yan's left. His blue clothes fluttered in the wind. The sun shone on his body, but no shadow appeared. However, no one noticed the abnormality of his shadow because the moment he appeared, a strong Great Ascension Stage aura also rolled out and became the focus of attention. Beside a rock to Cheng Yan's right, there was already a graceful shadow standing there. This shadow blended into the shadow of the rock. Even under the illumination of the sun, it appeared hazy and ethereal. It was extremely strange. A strong Great Ascension Stage aura also emerged from the shadow's body and occupied a domain. You found perfect river and mountain? Umo asked. Although she was only a shadow, what was strange was that this shadow's voice was extremely pleasant to the ears. It was clear and melodious like flowing spring water. Cheng Yan glanced indifferently at Xiao Ran and Umo, who appeared at the same time. He said, Are you very surprised? Yes, very surprised, Xiao Ran admitted. So, Cheng Yan asked, Our grudge is no longer limited to the shadow incantation, Umo said. Xiao Ran was silent for a moment and said, She's right. Cheng Yan smiled indifferently. I don't need the two of you to deal with my troubles. Xiao Ran and Umo didn't speak again. Han Kuei's expression was extremely angry. They all understood what perfect river and mountain meant. Originally, they had appeared here today with the intention of directly wiping out Cheng Yan and the others. There were hundreds of thousands of cultivators present. To the Soul Clan, their soul energy was endless. They could slaughter at will. However, even Han Kuei didn't expect that Cheng Yan would activate perfect river and mountain. Then I have to kill you even more. Han Kuei's voice was extremely cold. It was like the ice in the abyss that hadn't melted for thousands of years. It was so cold that it reached the bone marrow, causing countless cultivators to shiver. Luo Shang and Xiang then were already walking beside Cheng Yan. They looked at Han Kuei with cold killing intent. If you want to kill the people of Falling Dust Mountain, go ahead and try. Luo Shang's voice was like a flame in the cold winter, igniting the void. 3 Great Ascension Stage cultivators have already died in my hands. I don't need a few more of you. Xiang then glanced coldly at Xiao Ran and Umo. His voice was incomparably heavy like a heavy mountain. It echoed in everyone's ears and seemed so inconceivable. 3 Great Ascension Stage cultivators were actually killed by Xiang Nan. Chapter 1149. Runes flashed beneath Mu Yu's feet as he retreated. The black and white spirit energy in his body quickly circulated, forcing out by Jie's soul power that had invaded his body. The shadow split sword was raised, bringing with it an endless sword aura as it pierced towards Bai Jie's chest. Bai Jie reached out his hand and grabbed Mu Yu's shadow split sword. Your sword aura is useless against me, Bai Jie said with a cruel smile. Is that so? Mu Yu shook his hand, and the black and white spirit energy in his body separated. The black spirit energy went from his right hand to the shadow split sword. The shadow split sword's death aura became even stronger. The sword aura trembled and cut open a wound on Bai Jie's hand. The death spirit energy immediately invaded Bai Jie's arm and crazily devoured his flesh. However, the space behind Bai Jie lit up with a purple light that forcefully repelled the death spirit energy. Although the underworld grass life force and death aura is strong, it is still far from being able to devour me. Bang! Bai Jie struck out with his palm. White soul power rolled and covered the split shadow sword. The split shadow sword trembled slightly, and a green light spread out from its body, blocking the soul power outside. Mu Yu's shadow split sword was covered with domain power again. A green mist spread out from the shadow split sword, and a powerful poison mist spread out from the shadow split sword to Bai Jie's hand. It pushed aside Bai Jie's spirit energy. Bai Jie slightly frowned and let go of the shadow split sword as he retreated. Domain, no life to spare. Dead trees, no life to spare? No, this is not the domain sealed by dead tree. How can you use dead tree's domain? Bai Jie was clearly afraid of no life to spare. He originally thought that the no life to spare came from a sealed domain treasure. But if it was a sealed domain, it could not have reached this level. I'll know after I kill you. Mu Yu's shadow splits sword soared into the sky. The green sword aura was unique among the stars, causing all the stars to dim. The sword slashed down, causing the space to distort as if it could not withstand this attack. However, Bai Jie waved his hand at the stars and countless stars gathered in his hand, forming a dazzling longsword. The longsword emitted a dark purple light and brought with it a sharp whistling sound as it blocked Mu Yu's heavenly sword. Your ability is far inferior to Sword Shadow and Chun Feng's. Bai Jie disdainfully swung his starlight sword aura and slashed apart Mu Yu's heavenly sword, forcing Mu Yu's heavenly sword. This white ghost king is truly powerful. Little Handsome couldn't help but say. Mu Yu had to admit that Bai Jie was much stronger than any of the other races he had faced before. This guy was able to play tricks in front of his master. Whether it was in terms of scheming or strength, he was extremely powerful. He was not someone the other second-rate trash could compare to. At this time, Bai Jie's starlight sword aura stirred up the entire galaxy again. It was as if it was going to turn the entire sky upside down. Countless stars gathered in his sword aura. It was powerful and majestic, causing everyone's expression to change. The green 8 trigrams array under Mu Yu's feet flashed out. His eyes were filled with life and death energy again. The chaotic yin and yang surrounded the tip of the sword, causing the shadow split sword to become even more powerful. It clashed with Bai Jie's starlight sword aura. Wong, wong, wong. Intense soul power and sword aura rippled out like a raging tide. In the galaxy, whether it was the Mahayana realm humans or the other races, they all stopped fighting and tried their best to support their own domains to resist this terrifying ripple. Mu Yu's body tumbled back a few thousand feet before he could stabilize himself. However, Bai Jie did not move at all. He was still standing in place. Shua, Green Dragon Monster King, had already destroyed a Wings race's green star. Seeing that Mu Yu was no match for him, his body flashed. He clenched his hands in front of his chest. A raging dragon's breath gathered in his hands as he blasted it toward Bai Jie. Bai Jie turned around and waved his sword aura again. He destroyed Green Dragon Monster King's dragon's breath. Then, the void behind Bai Jie seemed to collapse. A white shadow appeared behind him. It was like a demon god had descended. Domain, shatter the galaxy. White Ape Monster King's fist was covered in a terrifying fist wind. The surrounding space was torn apart. His entire body's muscles bulged. He was filled with explosive power as he smashed it toward Bai Jie's back. Bai Jie coldly snorted. The starlight sword aura in his hand dispersed. It condensed into a giant fist again. It collided with White Ape Monster King's domain. Pang! White Ape Monster King's body retreated. The fist wind was dispersed by Bai Jie. He stomped his feet and stabilized his body. Damn, he's so strong. White Ape Monster King's fist was enough to shock others. However, Bai Jie's strength was beyond his imagination. He can use the Sumeru sun-shifting diagram's power. We'll be at a disadvantage if we fight him in his Dao artifact, Mu Yu said solemnly. As a master of the Array Palace, he understood what a Dao artifact meant. A Dao artifact had absolute power. When Bai Jie entered the Array sect, Muyu used his out-of-body cultivation to drive the power of the Array Palace to chase Bai Jie out of the Array sect. Now that Bai Jie was controlling the Sumeru sun-shifting diagram, it was almost impossible for them to defeat Bai Jie in the Sumeru sun-shifting diagram. At that moment, Han Kuei had already swung his giant warhammer at Muyu. Golden array patterns lit up on Muyu's body. The array patterns of so close, yet worlds apart, covered the surroundings. Han Kuei's powerful warhammer slammed into the array patterns of so close, yet worlds apart trembled slightly. However, it still blocked the warhammer and did not let the warhammer fall. His gaze turned cold as he looked at the star in the southeast corner. That was Han Kuei's green star. His current priority was to destroy all the green stars. Otherwise, if this stalemate continued, the situation would not be optimistic. There were a total of 50 green stars in the starry sky. Those stars were the life stars of the 50 Mahayana stage foreign races. Only by destroying them could they truly kill the foreign races. However, because the foreign races were almost risking their lives to stall everyone who wanted to destroy the green stars, the humans could only defend themselves. At that moment, only 3 of the 50 stars had been destroyed. Old Hairy Monkey, Senior Azure Dragon, help me stall Bai Jie. I must destroy the green stars. Muyu shouted. Okay, little bastard, hurry up and end this quickly. Otherwise, it will be too frustrating. I must ruthlessly hammer these bastards to death. The White Ape Demon King clenched his fists again. Dummy also wants to hammer the White Ghost King to death. Dummy stepped over from afar, raised his huge fist, and smashed it at Bai Jie. His fist wind was vast and mighty. Its power was no weaker than the White Ape Demon King's. Blockhead, I like your straightforwardness. When this battle is over, let's exchange blows. The White Ape Demon King laughed loudly. Once again, he condensed a fierce and domineering fist wind and attacked Bai Jie. When Bai Jie saw that Muyu wanted to destroy the green stars, he naturally would not allow it. Just as he was about to stop Muyu, the Green Dragon Demon King slapped over. Green light exploded, and the palm wind was like an avalanche. It slapped away a bone race person in front of him and blocked Bai Jie's figure. Your opponent is me. The Green Dragon Demon King shouted majestically. Muyu gritted his teeth. The Shadow Clone sword bloomed with light again and blasted away Han Kuei's warhammer. He had already retreated to Qingyan's side. At this time, Qingyan was tired of dealing with the siege of 4 great vehicle stage foreign tribesmen. No matter how strong his realm ability was, it was still quite difficult for him. Muyu's Shadow Clone sword lit up with a black and white sword light. Golden array patterns covered the Shadow Clone sword. With a sweep of the sword light violently shot out and slashed at the bone race people who were besieging Qingyan from afar. Array technique, worlds apart. Muyu's Shadow Clone sword only stabbed out in the same place, but it had already reached the head of a bone race person. Sword chi rose up and split the bone race person from head to toe. The aura of life and death invaded the bone race person's body, shattering his bones and destroying his body and soul. Muyu, what are you doing? You said that you would kill those enslaved people like this. The bone race person who was killed by Muyu was one of the 4 great vehicle stage foreign tribesmen who were besieging Qingyan. That bone race person was instantly killed by Muyu's Shadow Clone sword, but the stars quickly condensed light again and condensed its body. If we continue to be restrained like this, we will only lose ourselves. Muyu replied sternly. But Qingyan still wanted to say something. Xiang Nan on the side also said, war is inevitably accompanied by sacrifice. If we don't sacrifice a few people, then they will also be enslaved to death in the end. Xiang Nan's earth-spreading sand domain covered another Wings race person. The Wings race person couldn't dodge in time and was surrounded by yellow sand. The yellow sand completely destroyed the opponent's domain. The Wings race person was directly petrified and then turned into yellow sand and died. Xiang then took advantage of the situation and rushed out of the opponent's blockade. He rushed toward one of the green stars and destroyed it with a slash of his sword. After Mu Yu killed the bone race person, he took advantage of the time when the bone race person's body was resurrected and condensed. He also landed on Hun Kuei's natal star and destroyed it. You deserve to die. Hun Kuei had lost the connection with the Sumeru's sun changing diagram. He roared angrily and raised his war hammer again to attack Mu Yu. This time, Mu Yu was no longer afraid of Han Kuei. Han Kuei didn't have the capital to fight with his life, so he couldn't attack without restraint. I have tolerated you for a long time. Do you really think you are so great? The wood feather shadow sword shone with a green sword light, and the sword light split into 9. Each of the 9 sword shadows evolved into the 9 heavenly sword guides, each sword shadow exuding an aura of vitality. But at a certain moment, the 9 heavenly swords suddenly merged into one. The air seemed to have solidified, and it was as if there was only one heavenly sword left in the world. When the sword stabbed out, it transformed into thousands of illusions. The moment the shadow clone sword stabbed out, it appeared in front of Han Kuei with the support of Horizon Neighbor. The sword shattered the unstoppable war hammer into pieces. The shadow clone sword continued forward and stabbed Han Kuei's forehead. Han Kuei widened his eyes in shock and anger. His entire body was invaded by Mu Yu's violent sword aura. His entire body was instantly torn apart, and countless sword auras seeped out from the cracks in his body. Bang! Chapter 1150. Han Kuei became the first alien to be killed among the 50 people. His death lifted everyone's spirits and made the aliens even more ferocious. They all formed a circle and went to protect their own green stars. Brothers, let's slaughter the outsiders. Little Commander stood on Mu Yu's shoulder and shouted. He might be small, but his voice was filled with a penetrating force in the starry space. It was like a bugle call for a counterattack. Everyone gathered their strongest killing moves, wanting to directly kill the foreign invaders before them. Although there were few Mahayana realm experts in the human clan, every one of them was powerful. Whether it was the older generation like Deadwood, Immortal and I Lei, the Demon Kings, or Mu Yu's senior brothers, they all had the ability to kill ordinary aliens in the Mahayana realm. For the sake of the overall situation, they couldn't continue to show mercy. They all rushed toward the green stars. However, not all of the 50 aliens in the Mahayana realm were idiots. At least half of them had extraordinary strength. Even if they couldn't defeat Deadwood and the others, it was more than enough to hold them back and protect the green stars. After an intense battle, 17 green stars had already been destroyed by them, and 7 non-human beings had also been killed. When Bai Jie saw that the people he had brought with him had been killed, he was furious. He sent Dummy and the white ape demon king flying with a punch. Then, the Sumeru sun changing picture spun the stars again. A vast and powerful aura shot out from the stars and surrounded everyone again. Everyone only felt that the stars around them, which were originally just specks of light, suddenly became bigger in front of their eyes. It was as if they were being sucked into a world. By the time everyone reacted, they had already separated and were in a desolate grassland. What's going on? Where are the others? Mu Yu looked around vigilantly. Whether it was Qingyan, Luo Shang, the Demon Kings, or the aliens, everyone disappeared in front of Mu Yu. Little Shuai sniffed the air around and said in surprise, "It's strange. This is a real illusion." A real illusion? Mu Yu squatted down and touched the grass on the ground. The grass was clearly real, but he couldn't control it. He suddenly understood what it meant to be an illusion. Everything here was real, but in reality, they had not left the Sumeru sun shifting diagram. The scene around them seemed to have been moved from other places by the Sumeru sun shifting diagram, which confused their senses. This place looked like an illusion array, but it was also a real place. It was just like how Mu Yu was clearly heading towards Sword Shadow City, but Bai Jie used a Dao artifact to teleport him here. Bai Jie wanted to catch all these people in one fell swoop, but the strength of the 3rd heavenly layer human race and the monster race Deshang stage exceeded his expectations, so he could only separate all the Deshang stage masters of the 3rd heavenly layer and defeat them one by one. Muyu's gravity call appeared in his hand again. A flash of light flashed through his mind. He wanted to find Deadwood Daddy, but he was surprised to find that the gravity call had lost its effect. It was as if his perception had suddenly been blocked. "I can't find anyone else with a heart-questioning guide," Muyu said in a low voice. Outside the Sumeru Sun shifting diagram, all the survivors of the human race under the leadership of Zhuge Shaosheng and Helian Kong were fighting fiercely against the foreign races. These people did not enter the Sumeru Sun shifting diagram, so they did not know what was happening outside. However, everyone was fighting for the last hope of the human race. This time, no one retreated because they had no way out. If they failed, they would only be enslaved to death. The consequences would be even worse. Zhuge Shaosheng was a Tribulation Transcendent Stage array master. The power of his array techniques was extremely powerful. He had already killed 3 Tribulation Transcendent Stage foreign races in a row. Although there were many foreign races, Zhuge Shaosheng's cultivation was second to none. In addition, the blood of the human race had been stimulated. Everyone fought bravely with no regard for their own safety. Heavenly Qian trigram seals the starry universe. The white array patterns formed an octagonal white shield that enveloped everyone and sealed off the entire sky. The fierce shield spun and instantly killed the 3 body integration stage foreign races in front of them. However, both Zhuge Shaosheng and Helian Kong looked at the starry sky worriedly during the battle. The battle in the starry sky was the key. No matter what, we have to kill as many foreign races as possible. Zhuge Shaosheng's body was covered by powerful array patterns. At this moment, he was fighting against a soul race member who was at the 9th heaven of the Tribulation Transcendent Stage. There were huge casualties on the battlefield. Countless corpses of both the human race and the foreign races were strewn all over the ground. The Pill Cauldron sect had long been reduced to ruins. Powerful magic treasures radiated light in all directions. Spiritual power fluctuations collided fiercely in the air, causing cracks to appear on the ground. In all the enslaved cities on the 3 continents, the human race looked at the starry sky nervously. The Sumeru Sun shifting diagram connected them together. Therefore, they could clearly see the battle in the starry sky. They represented the stars of the Sumeru Sun shifting diagram. It was as if they were watching the battle from the sidelines. When Muyu used a powerful method to discover the natal stars of the Grand Ascension Stage foreign races, every enslaved human felt extremely excited. However, Bai Jie's methods were endless. He actually separated everyone and used the illusion array to break them one by one. It's much easier to deal with them one by one. Bai Jie looked coldly at the 3rd Heaven Grand Ascension Stage experts that he had transferred to other places. Then, he took a step forward and appeared in front of Gui Tian. At this moment, Gui Tian was transferred to a snow mountain by the Sumeru Sun shifting diagram. When he was thinking of a way to leave this place, Bai Jie had already appeared in front of him and grabbed at him. Buzz! The broadsword in Gui Tian's hand had already swept out and rushed violently towards Bai Jie. However, Bai Jie only flashed and slapped Gui Tian's chest. Gui Tian was sent flying and smashed into the snow. "You stay here and wait for me. I'll deal with everyone one by one. After all, you are still somewhat useful." Bai Jie coldly snorted and turned to leave. When he reappeared, he was already behind you. Umo was trapped in the dazzling sea and had nowhere to hide. She was about to resist, but was directly restrained by the starlight. Bai Jie's speed was very fast. Because there was a way to break free from the illusion, he had to end the battle quickly. In just a quarter of an hour, Gu Yiqian, Umo, Xiao Ran, Shimen Wuji, Wan, and the others had been restrained. White Ape Monster King, Azure Dragon Monster King, and the others were besieged by the foreign races. Although they were very powerful, they were helpless in the face of dozens of Grand Ascension Stage foreign races. Not to mention, Bai Jie had also joined the battle and used the Sumeru Sun shifting diagram to heavily injure the Monster Kings. In that case, the remaining people are you all. Bai Jie's first target was Muyu. Mu Yu's 4 senior and junior brothers were the ones who could cause trouble for him the most. As long as he restrained Mu Yu's 4 senior and junior brothers, everything would be fine. Mu Yu was flying in the desolate plains. This was an illusion, but it was also a real place. It was equivalent to secretly replacing the real wasteland with the illusion, so this illusion had a boundary. Mu Yu flew towards the boundary and quickly noticed a flaw in the illusion. Just as he was about to leave, a cold light fell from the void. Ding! Mu Yu raised his shadow sword. The sword light soared into the sky and blocked the sudden cold light. At this time, Bai Jie's figure had already appeared in front of Mu Yu. He coldly stared at Mu Yu. This time, no one will be able to help you. Bai Jie stared at Mu Yu. He had sent people to capture Mu Yu's senior and junior brothers, but the people he sent were all killed by Mu Yu without exception. The experts of the soul race suffered even more casualties. He already hated Mu Yu to the bone. Mu Yu's expression was serious. He would not underestimate Bai Jie. He could easily kill the other foreign race people, but he was still very cautious when facing Bai Jie. Bai Jie was already difficult to deal with before he obtained the Tao artifact, let alone now that he had the Sumeru Sun changing diagram. Being trapped in Bai Jie's Tao artifact, he was almost at an absolute disadvantage. If you want to fight, then fight. What's with all the nonsense? Mu Yu's eyes were already suffused with a black and white light. He and Bai Jie were in a situation where one side would die. In the past, he was weak and could not fight against Bai Jie. Now that he had stepped into the Great Ascension realm, there was nothing to be afraid of. You have a backbone. I want to see how long you can last in my hands. Bai Jie sneered. His hand gathered starlight, sword light again. The starlight shone in the sky. The sky above the wasteland was once again covered by stars. A powerful sword aura slashed toward Mu Yu. Mu Yu's shadow swords surged into the sky. It was as if they were stirring up the entire galaxy. One black and one white sword aura circled around. They began to form the 9 heavenly sword guides in the sky. Then, the black and white sword aura suddenly split into countless sword shadows. Every sword shadow nimbly danced in the sky. They shuttled through the starlight and intertwined with Bai Jie's sword aura. The sword chis in the air crisscrossed and collided with each other, creating earth-shattering sounds. The entire wasteland had been destroyed beyond recognition by the sword chis from the 2 of them. The ground had long been swept away, leaving gullies all over. The shocking cracks spread out for thousands of meters. Wong. The 2 sword auras collided in the sky again. A violent shock wave swept out from the center of the 2 sword auras. Mu Yu could not withstand Bai Jie's sword aura and was forced to retreat. However, after Mu Yu stabilized his body, the runes under his feet flashed. The Big Dipper constellation formation flashed and disappeared. He disappeared from where he was and appeared behind Bai Jie. The shadow swords were mixed with an endless aura as they slashed toward Bai Jie's head. Ding! Bai Jie's sword was deflected and stabbed toward Mu Yu's throat. Mu Yu kicked Bai Jie's wrist. The Big Dipper constellation formation flashed again and reappeared behind Mu Yu. However, Bai Jie seemed to have calculated Mu Yu's sword attack. The starlight turned into a shield and blocked Mu Yu's sword aura. Chapter 11:51. Swish! Mu Yu dodged and retreated. But this time, as soon as he appeared, the 7 giant snakes had already rolled out and appeared under Mu Yu's feet. They viciously bit down on Mu Yu's head. Mu Yu once again used the Heavenly Dipper constellation formation to dodge, but the giant snakes were everywhere. Every time Mu Yu appeared, they would follow him like a shadow and could always see Mu Yu's position. From the beginning, Bai Jie had only used the Sumeru Sun changing diagram to fight with them. He had never used his domain ability. This was the first time he had used his domain ability. However, Mu Yu was surprised to find that the domain Bai Jie used this time was actually the 7 arts of the wild underworld. The 7 arts of the wild underworld was the domain of the Palace Envoy. Before Mu Yu stepped into the Great Ascension stage, the Palace Envoy had put Mu Yu in danger many times and caused a lot of trouble for Mu Yu, so he had a very deep impression of this domain. What? Are you surprised? Bai Jie saw that Mu Yu was puzzled and laughed. In my Sumeru Sun changing diagram, I can steal everyone's domain. Mu Yu was slightly surprised. Not only could the Sumeru Sun changing diagram change one's life and land, but it could also steal one's domain. This Tao artifact was actually so powerful. Hiss! The 7 giant snakes circled in the air and bit at Mu Yu from various angles. The 7 arts of the wild underworld was displayed by Bai Jie, far surpassing the power displayed by the palace envoy. The teeth of each giant snake were like sharp blades that cut through the void. The snake's movements were also unbelievably fast. However, Mu Yu quickly remembered that if the Sumeru Sun changing diagram could really steal everyone's domain, then Bai Jie would definitely use life and death to deal with him in the blink of an eye. There must be some restrictions in this. Mu Yu's guess was right. If the Sumeru Sun changing diagram wanted to steal someone's domain, it must first have someone else's imprint. Just like all the great Ascension Stage foreign race people who were exchanging lives with humans, it needed every city to be shrouded in the sky-stealing, sun-changing diagram and collect all the imprints of the human race. The domain that Bai Jie could display at this time was also owned by the great Ascension Stage foreign race. But even so, Bai Jie could display at least 50 domain abilities under the effect of the Sumeru Sun changing diagram. It was equivalent to one person having to face 50 Great Ascension Stage experts alone. This terrifying method was almost invincible. Now that you know the power of the Sumeru Sun changing diagram, do you still plan to resist stubbornly? Surrendering is your best choice. Bai Jie said with a cold smile. Surrender without a fight? I would never have such thoughts. Mu Yu's expression was solemn. Facing the powerful 7 wild underworld skills, his entire body was already reverberating with array patterns. Under the effect of the primal yin and yang, the array patterns quickly condensed. When the 7 wild underworld skills were about to bite him, the near yet worlds apart formation had already covered his body, blocking the 7 wild underworld skills outside. At the same time, Mu Yu clasped his hands together. The power of the domain spread out from his hands and surged on the primal yin and yang. Then, the primal yin and yang quickly began to evolve. The center of the primal yin and yang's rotation seemed to contain a blurry world. Domain, Imperial Universe. Swish! A majestic dragon roar suddenly roared out from the center of the primal yin and yang. Following that, 7 azure dragons coiled around each other and rushed out from the primal yin and yang. They majestically flew around Mu Yu, their arrogant heads raised as they looked contemptuously at the 7 white snakes in front of them. These 7 azure dragons had the appearance of dragon vines. Roar! The 7 azure dragons disappeared in the air in the blink of an eye. When they reappeared, they had already grabbed at the 7 inches of the 7 giant snakes. Their speed was not any slower than the 7 giant snakes. The dragons and snakes in the air entangled and tore at each other. Violent auras collided in the air and exploded with a terrifying impact. The clouds in the sky were even shattered, unable to condense again. Hiss! The 7 giant snakes let out painful hisses. They were actually at a disadvantage when facing the 7 azure dragons. They were bitten by the azure dragons and were directly torn in two. Bai Jie's expression became incomparably gloomy. This is the wild underworld 7 extinction domain. Why do you know it too? Are you allowed to use other people's domains? The primal yin and yang in front of Mu Yu continued to revolve. The world in the center of the primal yin and yang released a tyrannical power that wrapped around Mu Yu's body. Mu Yu had already flown up and arrived beside Bai Jie. Domain, shatter the galaxy. Mu Yu's right hand clenched into a fist. His fist was filled with a powerful force that weighed millions of kilograms. It was as if his fist could shatter the galaxy and overturn the mountains and seas. His entire body was filled with explosive power that he could not wait to unleash. Boom! The fist smashed down at Bai Jie, but the starlight around Bai Jie also gathered in his right hand. He forcefully clashed with Mu Yu's fist. The two intense and terrifying powers clashed, causing the air to become extremely hot. Xiao. Muyu retreated. He felt his right hand go numb. Although Yu Qiankun used White Ape Demon King's domain with great power, compared to Bai Jie, it was still lacking. Bai Jie's strength was not something that could be defeated with brute force. Bai Jie's fist collided with Muyu's fist, but he didn't move at all. As Muyu retreated, Bai Jie took a step forward and continued to chase after Muyu. His soul force formed terrifying blood-red bows around his body. The moment these blood-red bows appeared, ghostly wails and howls could be heard. It was as if these blood-red bows were refined from countless vengeful spirits. Every single one of these blood-red bows was drawn to the fullest. Blood-red arrows gradually formed and shot towards Muyu from all directions. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Muyu stepped on the ground and quickly dodged. The 7 azure dragons also swept over. Their mouths suddenly burst out with a breath, meeting the bow and arrow head-on. However, the breath of the 7 azure dragons exploded on the bow and arrow and was directly destroyed by the bow and arrow. The bow and arrow also quickly pierced through the 7 azure dragons, leaving behind a large hole. Bang! The 7 green dragons were torn apart at the same time. Muyu's domain had been broken. Bai Jie had already arrived beside Muyu. Sol Kuei's warhammer appeared in his hand and smashed down at Muyu. Muyu felt a great pressure. This warhammer was even more overbearing in Bai Jie's hand. He felt as if a mountain was smashing down on him. In a hurry, Yu Qiankun's domain rolled out again. Domain, my master's rise and fall. Although Muyu could not use 50 domains like Bai Jie. Ever since he recomprehended Yu Qiankun's domain, he was able to control all the domains he had seen before. He controlled the most complex and mysterious domains. Because time was limited, he used Yu Qiankun to comprehend the domains he had seen or used before. The 4 Fey Kings had sealed their domains in their treasures for Muyu to use. Therefore, Muyu also controlled the 4 Fey Kings' domains. Chaotic Yin and Yang runes appeared. When Muyu used other people's domains, he used array techniques to simulate them. The runes formed waves that protected him. When Bai Jie's giant warhammer smashed down, it was as if it was smashing into a turbulent sea. It was met with great resistance. Voila! However, Bai Jie's strength exceeded Muyu's imagination. Although his warhammer was blocked by my master's rise and fall domain, the warhammer's power seemed to be endless. It forcefully resisted my master's rise and fall domain and broke through it. Muyu's shadow sword gathered a sharp sword aura to block the warhammer. Because of my master's rise and fall domain, the warhammer was slowed down. He barely managed to block it. However, the countless blood-colored arrows in the air made it impossible for Muyu to free himself. His sword aura cut through countless blood arrows, but an arrow still pierced through his shoulder. He was sent flying. He slammed into the ground and created a deep crater. You are still too weak. Bai Jie sneered. Ghostly shadows floated around. They formed sharp ghostly claws that slammed down on Muyu. Bang! 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 The ground boomed. All the ghostly claws landed on Muyu without exception. Muyu spat out a mouthful of blood. He was sent deep into the ground. This guy is really hard to deal with. Little Shuai curled up in Muyu's arms to help block the attacks and heal Muyu's injuries. Muyu was panting. Several of his ribs were broken. He merged into Muling. An endless stream of vitality flowed out of Muling. At the same time, the black and white spirit energy in his body once again worked on the bloody hole in his shoulder. At this time, Bai Jie had already caught up. He opened the ground with a palm and threw Muling into the air. At the same time, the starlight formed by his soul power formed a cage to trap Muling. You could only come out of Muling. His sword aura swept out again and dodged the starlight. Bang! Muyu was hit by Bai Jie's palm wind again and was sent flying 10,000 meters away. At this time, Muyu had forcefully used Imperial Universe domain. He had used up a lot of spirit energy in his body. If he was beaten like this, he would definitely be defeated by Bai Jie. You really are a hard bone to chew. You didn't die even like this. Not bad. Bai Jie didn't have to use that much effort to suppress the others. However, when he encountered Mu Yu who could also use other people's domains, he had to use a lot of effort. But this is the end for you. Bai Jie sneered. His white soul power once again covered the sky and smashed down on Mu Yu. This time, the heavily injured Mu Yu had no ability to resist. Mu Yu was also not satisfied. He had just comprehended the true essence of Imperial Universe domination. He did not expect to encounter such a tough opponent in his first real battle. Bai Jie, who had the Sumeru sun-shifting diagram, suppressed him very badly. He could not fight Bai Jie while he was inside Bai Jie's Dao treasure. Bai Jie's soul power had already descended. However, at this time, the void rippled. Following that, a majestic mountain crushed the illusion. The majestic aura once again condensed. The mountain became a heaven master and smashed into Bai Jie's soul power. Bai Jie's expression changed slightly. He immediately retreated. He actually felt a trace of threat from this aura. You're not allowed to harm others. Tian Ran's entire body flickered with a faint golden light. The Sky Spill reincarnation peak in her hand emitted a powerful aura. It forcibly tore a hole in the illusion and rushed here. Sky Spill reincarnation peak. Chapter 1152. The Heavenly Birth Reincarnation Peak was also a powerful Dao artifact. It had been used by Feng Haochen to suppress the Sea Demon King, but it had fallen into Mu Yu's hands by accident. Mu Yu had given this paradise-like mountain to Tian Ran. Tian Ran had relied on the Heavenly Birth Reincarnation Peak to reach the Grand Ascension stage. If she wanted to fight against the Sumeru sun-shifting diagram, she had to use a Dao artifact on the same level as it. You think you can stop me? If I'm not wrong, the Heavenly Birth Reincarnation Peak's chaotic yin and yang isn't in your hands. How can a Dao artifact that has lost its chaotic yin and yang fight me? Bai Jie stared at the mountain in Tian Ran's hand. Although he was wary, he wasn't afraid. He even revealed a hint of mockery. The Array Hall and the Ruins Opening Cauldron were also extremely powerful Dao artifacts, but they couldn't be used casually because they had to guard the Third Heaven's protective array. Without the chaotic yin and yang to support the Heavenly Birth Reincarnation Peak, it was equivalent to losing its soul. It couldn't use the most effective spell techniques. This isn't a one-man battle to begin with. The air rippled again. Qingyin's steady voice came from the void. Then, a sharp light flashed through the air and appeared beside Mu Yu. He helped Mu Yu up. Are you all right? I'm fine. Mu Yu stood up. It was still too difficult for him to face Bai Jie alone. You're all here. Mu Yu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were still filled with a biting battle intent. Tian Ran used the Heavenly Birth Reincarnation Peak to find us. She relied on her connection to the Heavenly Swords, Chengyan said. Luo Shang and Xiang Nan also appeared. Their eyes flashed with hatred. No matter who it was, they all had an irreconcilable hatred for Bai Jie. Together? Luo Shang asked. Together? Mu Yu nodded. Together, Tian Ran said. Xiang Nan and Chengyan nodded slightly. Their faces were filled with a strong battle intent. The 5 heavenly swords streaked across the sky, emitting a chilling sword light. The void seemed to be trembling. Qingyin's pure erosion, Luo Shang's burning heaven, Xiang Nan's stargazing, Mu Yu's split shadow, and Tian Ran's immortal dew. Out of the 9 heavenly swords, 5 of them were gathered. Each heavenly sword was suffused with a special brilliance, illuminating the entire sky. There was a subtle connection between them. They were slowly humming, cold and austere. Be careful. He has a Dao artifact and is very strong, Mu Yu said. None of them were Bai Jie's match in a one-on-one fight. Their only chance was to work together. However, even if they worked together, their chances of facing Bai Jie were still slim. This was because Bai Jie's Dao artifact could reach the level of sky-stealing sun-swapping, which firmly suppressed all of them. However, none of them would back down. They had no reason to back down. They could only fight. Come to die together. This way, I won't have to kill you one by one. Bai Jie said with a sinister smile. The blood-red bow once again transformed into tens of thousands of arrows in the sky. Each arrow was formed from a trapped, resentful spirit. These resentful spirits were sealed within the arrows and had already lost their rationality. Their resentment transformed into a powerful force. They only wanted to break through the obstruction and kill everyone in front of them. Shio! 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 A rain of arrows filled the sky. Tens of thousands of arrows pierced through the void, leaving behind a terrifying hissing sound. They were explosive and berserk, bringing with them waves of blood-red soul power. They mixed with the starlight of the Sumeru sun-changing diagram, completely surrounding Muyu and the others. However, the 5 heavenly swords rushed into the sky at the same time, bringing with them tens of thousands of sword light. They stirred up the heavens from 5 different directions, as if they wanted to pierce a hole in the sky. The wind rose and the clouds surged. The 5 directions of the whirlpools seemed to want to shatter the entire sky. The 5-sword chi suddenly slashed down. The heaven and earth were illuminated by the sword chi. The powerful sword chi swept out. The majestic sword chi instantly destroyed the dense blood arrows and shot towards Baijia. The 5 heavenly swords were like the divine weapons of immortals. They swept up rays of light, as if they wanted to drive away the darkness of the world. Boom! The 5 heavenly swords suddenly slashed onto Baijia's body. The violent sword chi exploded with Baijia as the center. The aura swept out for tens of thousands of miles. All the plant life was instantly destroyed. In the cities of the 3rd layer of the continent, the enslaved humans looked at the battle in the starry sky in shock. They were connected by the Sumeru sun-changing diagram. It was as if they were personally watching this incomparably fierce battle. Jianing Chunfeng's 5 heavenly swords were grand and domineering. They were unstoppable, igniting the fighting spirit in the hearts of all the enslaved people. The heavenly swords show their might and sweep away all evil in the world. Kill him and return the 3rd layer of heaven to its former glory. Kill the strange races. All the enslaved people began to crazily shout. Baijia had brought a group of ugly, strange races to occupy the entire 3rd layer of heaven. He had treated them like livestock and tortured them every day. They had become the source of power for the strange races. They had long wanted to resist, but they did not have the ability to do so. Now that the true God was not here, the only one who could save them was the true God's disciple. In the wasteland, there was an endless series of deafening explosions. Baijia's figure was also submerged in the endless smoke and light. The divine might of the heavenly sword was vast and mighty as it slashed down on the world. Everyone hoped that this demon who enslaved the human race would be executed on the spot. However, Baijia only gave a disdainful sneer. His body suddenly shot out from the center of the explosion. He held a white spear in his hand and swept it out, sweeping away the might of the 5 heavenly swords. Too weak. With your little bit of skill, how can you fight me? Baijia laughed. He stood in the void and looked down at Mu Yu's group of 5. Not only them, but all the enslaved people on the 3 continents who were watching this battle were also scared witless. Baijia's strength was too strong. Facing the heavenly sword's might that could destroy the world, he was actually safe and sound. The true God's disciple was actually unable to defeat him? If they could not defeat Baijia, then who in the 3rd layer of heaven could? Baijia gave a loud shout. Countless soul force starlight gathered together, forming withered ghost claws. The sharp ghost claws flashed in the void and swept towards Mu Yu's group. Universe Origin Pursuit. The domain around Chang Yin seemed to have been swept by a ripple, and all the ghostly claws that were close to him were distorted by his domain. They surrounded the sky sword, and all the soul power was distorted as well. They were forced to revolve around the sky sword. Universe Origin Pursuit, Spirit Lord Jin Yuming's domain. It could forcibly control all attacks in his hands, preventing them from being used. Heaven Burning Wrath. Luo Shang's entire body was covered in angry golden flames. The golden flames wanted to burn all evil in the world. The flames formed a sea of fire. All the ghost claws that reached into the sea of fire were ignited by the flames. They burned fiercely and crazily, unable to get close to Luo Shang. Heaven-burning wrath, Spirit Lord Hui Yuming's domain. Inside his domain, there was nothing that could not be burned. Even water could be ignited. Earth-spreading sand release. The sand around Xiang then covered the ghost claw. It gradually enveloped the oncoming ghost claw and turned it into a part of the sand. The ghost claw's power gradually weakened, and it could not advance any further. Earth-spreading sand release, Spirit Lord Hui Yuming's domain. Inside his domain, everything would be turned into sand and be under his control, including spirit energy. Clear lotus world. Tian Ran's entire body was covered by a golden lotus. She was like a goddess in the center of the lotus, untainted by mud. The lotus slowly rotated and bloomed with a dazzling golden light. When the ghost claws touched her golden lotus, they only let out a soft cry. They couldn't break through the barrier of the lotus. Clear lotus world. Tian Ran comprehended her own domain with the help of the heaven-spreading reincarnation peak. Inside her domain, no one could get close to her and hurt her. It could be said to be an absolute defense. Life and death dominates heaven and earth. Black and white light shot out from Mu Yu's eyes and surrounded the surroundings. The black and white light wrapped around the incoming ghost claws and then swallowed them. Life and death in the blink of an eye. The ghost claws couldn't escape at all. The ghost claws summoned by Bai Jie were destroyed in an instant. His powerful soul power condensed ghost claws that blotted out the sky. But against the equally powerful Mu Yu and senior brother, these ghost claws couldn't do anything to them. However, Bai Jie waved his hand again, and the entire starlight changed direction. He smiled viciously and said, "You guys never knew what my domain was, right?" Mu Yu and the others really didn't know. From the beginning until now, Bai Jie had been relying on the Sumeru sun shifting painting. Even when he used his domain, he relied on the sky-stealing sun shifting painting to use other people's domains. No matter what your domain is, you deserve to die. Xiangnan roared with murderous intent. A powerful sandstorm rolled in all directions, and all the ghost claws were disintegrated by him. He held the stargazing sword and slashed down towards Bai Jie. The sandstorm surrounded the heavenly sword, and it was unstoppable. I'll let you guys understand your loss. My domain is called Boundless White Sky. Bai Jie sneered. Endless soul force rolled out from his body and covered everyone. The originally crisscrossed ravines of the wilderness had already disappeared. Mu Yu and the others only felt a flash in front of their eyes before they were submerged into a void. The void was covered in a vast expanse of white fog. They couldn't see the end of it. What made their hearts palpitate even more was that in this vast expanse of white fog, their domain actually gave birth to a sense of powerlessness. It was as if their domain had sunk into the sea like a stone thrown into the sea. His domain, Boundless White Sky, weakened all attacks. Xiangnan's stargazing sword was halfway through when he felt like he was slashing through thin air. The sword Qi was in front of Bai Jie. Bai Jie only reached out his hand and grabbed Xiangnan's stargazing sword. Whoosh! Mu Yu, Qian, and the others' heavenly swords arrived and slashed at Bai Jie from different directions. However, Bai Jie seemed to have grown 4 ugly tentacles. It was as if he had 6 arms. He easily grabbed Mu Yu and the others' heavenly swords. You guys are still too weak. I don't need to use the Sumeru sun shifting painting to deal with you. Chapter 1153. Bai Jie's tentacles were filled with immense strength. They firmly grabbed onto Mu Yu's 5 heavenly swords. At the same time, his powerful soul power locked onto the heavenly swords, making it impossible for Mu Yu and the others to retrieve the heavenly swords. This time, without the heavenly swords, let's see what you'll do. Bai Jie sneered. His soul power was like a rope, completely binding the 5 heavenly swords. He then summoned starlight from the void, sealing the connection between the heavenly swords and the heavenly swords. Normally, They relied on the heavenly swords in their hands to use the heavenly sword 9 guides to defeat their opponents. To them, the heavenly swords were like the claws and fangs of tiger. One could imagine just how important their heavenly swords were. All of the humans watching this battle felt their hearts turn cold. Everyone knew that Jian Chunfeng was most famous for his 9 powerful heavenly swords. When the heavenly swords showed their might and swept through the world, no one could stop them. In the hands of his disciples, the heavenly swords also displayed a powerful sword intent. But now, the swords in their hands have been taken away. Could it be that the heavens really want all of the humans on the 3 continents to die? Every human that was enslaved, from the elderly to the young, all felt disheartened. Although Jian Chunfeng's 4 disciples were strong enough that no one on the 3 continents was their match, facing the leader of the strange races, Bai Jie, even the heavenly swords have been taken away. This battle was just too difficult. But Mu Yu and the others did not panic. They only coldly looked at Bai Jie. Mu Yu's Mu Ling slowly changed, forming the same sword shape as the shadow swords. With a sword in my heart, everything is a sword. Mu Yu swept out the Mu Ling in his hand. The sword light rippled, overflowing with life and endless killing intent. Qingyan's metal spirit also turned into a gray longsword. Luo Shang's hand held a burning sword light condensed from flames. Xiang Nan's sword was like a diamond, shining with a golden luster, heavy and steady. The strongest thing about these brothers was not only the heavenly swords in their hands, but also the heavenly sword 9 guides they had inherited from Jian Chunfeng. As long as there was a sword in the heart, everything was a sword. Every one of them wielded their own powerful swords. When they swung their swords, the sword intent was awe-inspiring. It evolved into the sword momentum of the heavenly sword 9 guides. The shape of the swords flowed in the air. A sword beam slashed down with unstoppable force. Whoosh! This time, only Mu Yu and the other 3 disciples rushed up. The sword wheels in their hands collided and complemented each other, forming an extremely powerful sword chi. The sword chi once again raised a vast expanse of white mist, tumbling up and down, fiercely rushing towards the white realm. However, Bai Jie's territory made the 4 of them feel like they could not use their power. Their swords were extremely powerful, but when they slashed out, their swords were weakened. When the swords reached Bai Jie raised his hand and dissolved their swords. In my domain, all of your attacks are useless. The 6 tentacles on Bai Jie's back rose up high, each grabbing a heavenly sword. My attack, however, is real. Whoosh! Bai Jie took a step forward, and the 6 tentacles behind him gripped the heavenly sword. They swept up sword intent and slashed down at the 4 of them. Pang! 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 Mu Yu and the others wanted to block Bai Jie, but when they raised their hands, they realized that Bai Jie's swords were unstoppable. It was like a mountain had come crashing down, smashing into their arms. Their arms burned with pain as they tumbled away. Whether it was Qingyan, Luo Shang, or Xiang Nan, they all spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood floated in the air, and it was a shocking sight. It was reflected in the eyes of the enslaved humans in the cities. Bai Jie was like an undefeatable god. He made the humans feel despair. All of you, surrender yourselves. Bai Jie's 5 heavenly swords slashed down at them again, but Tian Ran had already conjured for golden lotuses, enveloping Mu Yu and the others. At the same time, Bai Jie's powerful attack slammed into Tian Ran's clear lotus. Tian Ran's face paled, and blood seeped out of the corner of her mouth. Her clear lotus had an absolute defense, but it was only effective against people of similar levels. Against the powerful Bai Jie's unstoppable attack, it was still unable to block it. I heard that you are Jian Chunfeng's daughter. You do have some skills, but you're not on the same level as me. How are you going to stop me? Bai Jie slashed down at Tian Ran's clear lotus again. Tian Ran released the clear lotus. Mu Yu shouted. He was very anxious. With Tian Ran's current level of cultivation, it was too much for her to cast an absolute defense domain like the clear lotus. This domain was equivalent to Tian Ran using her own power to help everyone block Bai Jie's attack. Tian Ran clenched her teeth and said firmly, "I will protect everyone." Pang! Tian Ran received another attack from Bai Jie, and her face became extremely pale. She shouted, and the golden light on her body shone brightly. The clear lotus brought everyone and retreated. This domain is too powerful. Tian Ran, don't be rash. Muyu spat out the blood in his mouth. The primal yin and yang in front of his chest had already begun to circulate. His eyes were filled with black and white runes. Yu Qianquan's domain once again circulated from his body. At this time, regardless of whether it was Qingyan or Luo Shang, they were both heavily injured. They stood together once again, facing Bai Jie together. "No matter what, we have to kill this guy. Otherwise, there will be endless trouble," Qingyan said in a deep voice. Everyone understood this logic, but not only was Bai Jie's domain powerful, he even had the Sumeru sun changing diagram on him. Not to mention, even the heaven sword had been taken away by him. Are you guys still struggling? Bai Jie did not give Mu Yu and the others a chance to breathe. The starlight that filled the sky mixed with a monstrous aura came crashing down, engulfing everyone. Bang! Everyone was sent flying once again. Their bodies suffered an incomparably intense impact. The blood in their bodies was overturned, as if they were about to explode. "Give me some time." Mu Yu stabilized his body in the air and shouted. The domain power in his body was rapidly circulating, gathering in the primal yin and yang in front of his chest. As long as he was given some time, he would be able to use the domain's runes and discover the domain's weakness. In the past, when he used Yu Qianquan, many people's domains could cover it for a short period of time. However, facing the powerful Bai Jie, it was not that easy to control this domain. "All right," Qingyan and the others did not hesitate. They protected Mu Yu behind them. The sword light on their bodies bloomed once again as they charged towards Bai Jie. At this time, Little Marshal also leaped out. He angrily stared at Bai Jie and shouted, "Little white ghost, you even dare to steal my sword." Little Marshal's body unknowingly lit up with a white light. The light gathered in the air and formed a sword intent. It was as if a powerful sword intent was about to burst out from his body. Then, he shouted in a childish voice. The attack behind Bai Jie suddenly stopped. The 5 heaven swords that were caught by Bai Jie's tentacles began to emit a slight rhythm. It was as if they were responding to Little Marshal. It was as if they could not wait to return to Little Marshal's hands. The heaven swords that were originally sealed by Bai Jie showed signs of breaking free. Shua, 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 shua. The 5 heaven swords disappeared into Bai Jie's tentacles and melted into the void. When Bai Jie reacted, the 5 heaven swords had already appeared beneath Little Marshal's feet. The 5 heaven swords' hilts faced each other with the tips facing outwards, forming a disc. Little Marshal stood on the hilt with his hands on his waist. He proudly said, "Little white ghost, my heaven swords listen to me. You have a death wish." Bai Jie's body flashed. He tried to grab Little Marshal, but Little Marshal turned into a human. His little feet stepped on the sword hilt, and the 5 heaven swords immediately spun. They formed a sharp disc that cut through the void and went to meet Bai Jie. Pang! Little Marshal was sent flying. He fell into the void. His face was covered in dust. The 5 heaven swords scattered. He could not block Bai Jie's attack. Fortunately, Chungyin and the others had grabbed hold of the heaven swords again. The heaven swords released a sword light that reached the sky. The 4 of them intertwined the sword shadows in front of their chests to form a powerful sword wind. With Mu Yu as the center, it protected him. "You're trying to hit a stone with an egg. Are you still going to be stubborn?" Bai Jie coldly smiled and swept down again. Chungyin and the others' faces changed. They felt as if a giant rock had smashed into their chests. The blood in their bodies roiled. Boom! They were sent flying again, but Bai Jie's attack followed them like a shadow. Qingyan and the others' attacks could not affect Bai Jie in this area. But Bai Jie's own attacks were real. Hold on. Xiao Shui landed on Mu Yu's shoulder and hurriedly shouted. Bai Jie stopped and coldly looked at Qing Yan and the others. A war hammer appeared in his hand. The war hammer was very powerful. It came down on them. Qing Yan and the others coughed up blood again, but they held on. They could only rely on Mu Yu. They placed all their hopes on Mu Yu. All the enslaved humans on the 3 continents were watching this battle. They were worried for the 5 of them. They prayed for them silently. Their fates depended on this battle. Break for me, Bai Jie roared. The war hammer in his hand was raised high. The hammer brought with it the sound of wind and thunder. It came crashing down on Mu Yu and the others. The hammer's power was even stronger than before. This time, Qing Yan and the others could not block it. However, a powerful domain aura suddenly flowed out of the chaotic yin and yang in front of Mu Yu's chest. It echoed all around. Then, runes tumbled and protected Qing Yan and the others. When Bai Jie's insufferably arrogant warhammer came crashing down, it found that it had smashed into a soft sponge. Imperial Universe's white emptiness. Mu Yu suddenly opened his eyes. The black and white light in his eyes kept flashing. He looked at Bai Jie with incomparable calmness. His domain kept shooting out, resisting Bai Jie's domain. It even merged with Bai Jie's domain and blocked Bai Jie's insufferably arrogant warhammer. How is this possible? Chapter 1154. Bai Jie's face was terrifyingly gloomy. He thought back to the battle just now. All sorts of strange phenomena had appeared on Mu Yu's body. From Mu Yu's Deadwood Evergreen's desperation to the Fey King's domain, Bai Jie had always thought that Mu Yu had used the Jade Pendant and the others to display their domains. This was because Deshang stage experts could use other people's domains. As long as Deadwood Evergreen and the other Fey Kings sealed their domains for Mu Yu would be able to display their domains. However, from the moment Mu Yu displayed Bai Jie's domain, Bai Jie had already realized that something was wrong. Bai Jie couldn't seal his domain and give it to Mu Yu. Mu Yu wasn't using a magic treasure to display his domain. He was copying someone else's domain. It had to be known that although Bai Jie could use other Spirita's domains, that was because he had the Sumeru sun-changing diagram. He could imprint his own people's aura, but the prerequisite was that those Spiritas had to willingly hand over their aura. He wasn't like Mu Yu, who only needed a bit of time to display someone else's domain. What is your domain? Bai Jie asked coldly. I won't let you die knowing. Mu Yu didn't like to tell his opponent about his background. There was no need for that. It was fine as long as he knew his own trump card. Why explain it to his opponent? The formation runes on his body surged again. Yu Qianquan's domain had already covered Qing Yan and the others. It was the same domain. This time, Mu Yu and the others would no longer feel powerless. He controlled Bai Jie's domain, which was equivalent to directly crippling Bai Jie's domain. There are strong and weak domains. Even if you can use my domain, I will make you wish you were dead. Bai Jie's gaze was vicious as he looked at Mu Yu. The war hammer in his hand had already turned into a spear and stabbed towards Mu Yu. This long spear, condensed from starlight, brought about a violent wave of air, as though the air was being rapidly compressed. The tip of the spear was incomparably sharp, capable of turning even dust into nothingness. The void trembled once again, as though the sky was about to collapse. Rumbling sounds rang out incessantly, causing everyone's heart to palpitate. The spear pierced down, its sharpness unstoppable. Mu Yu and the others held the celestial swords again. The celestial swords shined brightly. The sword intents of the 5 celestial swords gathered together and formed a point that contained endless killing intent. The 5 of them had the same idea. The 5 celestial swords connected at this moment. The swords hummed and clashed with Bai Jie's spear. Boom! A destructive aura swept out once again. Smoke and dust billowed, and rays of light shone brightly. Countless streams of spiritual energy swept out, making earth-shattering noises. Mu Yu and the others flew back a few hundred meters, and Bai Jie also retreated a few dozen meters. The combined attack of the 5 of them only caused Bai Jie to retreat a few dozen meters. Even though Bai Jie's domain was restrained by Mu Yu, his strength was still not to be underestimated. You can use other people's domains, right? Then I want to see how many domains you can use at the same time. Bai Jie had already thought of Mu Yu's domain. Although he was not very clear what Mu Yu's domain was, Mu Yu needed some time to use his domain. This meant that Mu Yu's domain was not perfect. Shua, shua, shua. The 43 strange races appeared once again in the air. This time, everyone no longer looked down on them. Originally, there were 50 strange races, but 7 of them had been killed. The strength of the third heaven human and demon race was not something they dared to look down on anymore. Use your strongest domain to kill them. Bai Jie shouted angrily. The 43 strange races spread out and surrounded Mu Yu and the others. Their bodies lit up with all kinds of lights at the same time, and each of them condensed their own domain. The domain displayed by the 43 strange races had reached a terrifying level. Bai Jie could only use the sky-stealing, sun-swapping painting to change the domain of one person at a time. However, this time, the 43 Mayana stage strange races were gathered together. The superposition of the 43 domains caused the entire void to become incomparably hot. The aura of the domain could destroy the heavens and the earth, causing the faces of all the enslaved people on the 3 continents to change drastically. Even a god would not be able to save them from such a joint domain. The faces of Qingyan and the others changed. Everyone's breathing became heavy. Tian Ran's clear lotus appeared again, wanting to protect everyone. Mu Yu's eyes glowed with black and white light as he looked coldly at Bai Jie. His eyes flickered with an awe-inspiring fighting spirit. This time, let's see how you're going to block it. Bai Jie's gaze fell on Mu Yu, and a trace of greed appeared in his eyes. He wanted to capture Mu Yu and figure out what his domain was. Then he would snatch his domain. The 43 strange races domains, in addition to the Mahayana stage domain displayed by Bai Jie, had a total of 44 domains. All of them smashed towards them at the same time. Domain, Mo Luo Curse. Domain, Corpse Fern Dance. Domain, Bone Fiend Mountain Alliance. Domain, 10,000 Ghost Shadows. Domain, Purple Winged Heavenly Silkworm Frost. The multicolored and powerful domains came crashing down. These domains might not be afraid of the few of them, but with 44 domains, it was impossible for them to resist. It's over. The true God's disciple is probably going to die this time. Is there really no one to save us? Is this world really going to belong to the strange races? In all the cities of the 3 continents, the humans who were enslaved by the strange races all shook their heads and sighed. They all looked up at the starry sky, watching this terrifying duel. The true God was not here, and his disciple had not truly matured. Facing the powerful Mahayana stage, strange races, the true God's disciple was still at a disadvantage. The legend of this fellow disciple was probably going to end here. Despair spread through everyone's hearts. Even though they had fallen to the bottom of the abyss a year ago, ever since Mu Yu and the others returned from the ancient battlefield, hope had been ignited in their hearts. They were waiting for the true God's disciple to lead them out of this abyss of misery. Unfortunately, no matter how monstrous the strength of the true God's disciple was, he was still not a match for Bai Jie and the strange races that Bai Jie led. Was darkness really going to descend upon this world? However, Mu Yu suddenly leaped out, blocking in front of Qingyan and the others. The chaotic yin and yang in front of his chest was already spinning faster and faster. One black and one white, 2 ancient chi flowed endlessly, following which a green light shot out from the black and white vortex, covering Mu Yu's body. At the same time, the heart-seeking guide once again coiled around his hand, giving him a different kind of solemnity. Spiritless, void, immortal. Mu Yu snorted. The searing rod of conscience in her hands rippled with spirit runes, spreading out like a spider web, covering all the foreign tribesmen and merging into their domains. With the help of the searing rod of conscience and the heavenly rule of the Tao treasure, this domain was not inferior to the 44 domains in the slightest. Wong. It was like the evening drum and morning bell that came from the distant void, forming an invisible and domineering giant hand that easily flattened the violent winds and huge waves of the sea. The violent domains of the 44 foreign races actually all disappeared in an instant, as if they could no longer raise any waves. The entire world fell silent. Whether it was the strange races or the human race, they all fell silent. No one dared to breathe loudly, all stunned by the scene before them. All the humans were in disbelief, and all the strange races were shocked beyond words. These strange races still maintained their domains in their hands. Their domains had already left, surging towards Mu Yu and the others. However, in an instant, these powerful domains seemed to have disappeared mysteriously. Many non-humankind beings paused in shock even before the ferocious looks on their faces faded. They seemed to have lost the ability to think and couldn't react at all. Why had their domains suddenly disappeared like a stone sinking into the sea? Cheng Yin and the others also looked at Mu Yu in confusion. They had never heard of Mu Yu using this domain before. Mu Yu panted, his eyes filled with determination. Only he knew what this domain meant. Spirit extinction, no immortal. In this domain, all spells would be ineffective, including the power of domains. Mu Yu borrowed the power of the heart-questioning attraction to unleash the spirit extinction, no immortal domain to the extreme, far surpassing the level of a normal Great Ascension stage cultivator's domains. He had single-handedly destroyed the 44 domains of the strange races. All the spectators on the 3 continents were in an uproar. None of them had thought that Mu Yu would still have this hidden card up his sleeve. Mu Yu had single-handedly destroyed 44 domains. This kind of powerful strength allowed everyone to see the light of hope again. Spirit extinction, no immortal, Ran Hengshi. You even know Ran Hengshi's domain. Bai Jie glared fiercely at Mu Yu. Ran Hengshi? Spirit extinction, no immortal, was Ran Hengshi's domain? One of the 9 immortals. It's actually him. This time, even Mu Yu couldn't help but be moved. This was because he didn't know that Spirit Extinction No Immortal was Ran Hengshi's domain. The reason why he learned this domain was mainly because when he was in the demon subduing pagoda, there was a layer of Spirit Extinction No Immortal that guarded the domain. At that time, Mu Yu had relied on the Spirit Extinction No Immortal to lure Gue Xian Ming in from the gate of hell and separate his body. Mu Yu had a very deep impression of this domain. This domain was enough to turn anyone into a mortal, without any cultivation, spirit energy, or spells. When Mu Yu used Yu Qianquan to learn domains in Flowing Water Village, he focused on learning this domain. However, there were strong and weak domains. Even if he could control this domain, it was still quite difficult for him to face 44 domains of the strange races at the same time. If not for the heart-questioning attraction suddenly appearing to help him, even if he used this domain, he wouldn't have been able to block it. Chapter 1155. The 44 domains were broken, but Mu Yu and the others were not happy. Bai Jie had a powerful Dao artifact, so it was impossible for him to be restricted by spirit extinction without a mortal so easily. After losing their spirit power, all the strange races in the sky could no longer fly and began to fall to the ground. Spirit extinction without a mortal had completely controlled their cultivation. At this time, Cheng Yin and the others took advantage of the moment when all the strange races were stunned. They had already grasped the heavenly sword in their hands and leaped into the air. Their falling dust steps flashed as they slashed towards the strange races. Cheng Yin and the others were also restricted by the spirit extinction without a mortal's domain. They could not use their own domains, but even if they did not use spirit power, they could still use the light and nimble falling dust steps and the sword in their hands to kill the strange races. Shua! Cheng Yin rushed to the front. With a raise of his hand, the erosion-cleansing sword slashed towards a corpse race person that had just fallen to the ground, directly chopping off his head. Luo Shang, Xiang Nan, and Tian Ran were not willing to fall behind. They used their powerful sword techniques to kill a strange race person. In the blink of an eye, 4 Great Ascension Stage strange races were dead. Bai Jie roared. The powerful Shumi sun-changing diagram had already begun to condense countless starlight on his body. He swung his sword high up in the air. With a crash, Muyu's spirit extinction without immortal domain could not withstand the pressure of the Tao artifact and shattered. Spirit power once again returned to everyone's body. The shocked, strange races immediately flew up from the ground and dodged Qingyan and the other sword techniques. Muyu retreated and stood together with Qingyan and the others. You should have used this domain earlier, Luo Shang said in a deep voice. If Muyu had used this domain in the starry sky, then with the help of the Great Ascension Stage human experts, he would have killed half of the strange races. Muyu shook his head. I was only able to use this domain with the help of the Heart Questioning Guide. I didn't know that the Heart Questioning Guide would guide me. Even if Muyu's domain ability was strong, he was only one person after all. It was too difficult for him to use his domain on more than 50 Grand Ascension Stage outsiders. If it wasn't for the help of the heart-seeking technique, perhaps as long as there were 7 or 8 Grand Ascension Stage outsiders, it would be enough to resist Muyu with their own domain and break free from the restrictions of spirit extinction. I will never give you another chance. This time, Bai Jie was staring at Muyu. Because of his carelessness, Muyu had used spirit extinction without immortal, and he had lost 4 Great Ascension Stage foreign tribesmen. He had already borrowed all the power of the Sumeru sun-changing diagram to suppress Muyu and the others. Muyu wasn't the master of the Heart Questioning Guide, so he couldn't really use it to resist the Sumeru sun-changing diagram. At this time, Bai Jie was already prepared. The power of the Sumeru sun-changing diagram was far beyond their imagination. All of the outsiders roared angrily. They had been tricked by Muyu's domain, and they were already filled with resentment. Everyone once again lit up with the power of their domains, including Bai Jie. The aura of 40 domains once again gathered at one point. Die for me, Bai Jie roared and rushed towards Muyu and the others. When Muyu's spirit extinction, no immortal domain swept out. The Sumeru sun-changing diagram had already forced it back. The faces of Muyu and the others sank again. This time, if they couldn't rely on spirit extinction, no immortal, they would have to face the 40 domains head-on. Everyone could feel the seriousness of the situation. Danger had descended once again. They had been forced into a desperate situation by the Sumeru sun-changing diagram. Now they could only give it their all. Green runes flashed under Muyu's feet. The wind heart-linking formation connected the 5 of them together. Everyone's minds were connected, and the sword light in their hands became even brighter. Facing Bai Jie, everyone was prepared to perish indiscriminately. 9 heavenly sword guides, 1 sword against 10,000 techniques. The 5 heavenly swords merged into the void, forcibly resisting each other. Biting cold sword intent suddenly erupted, forming a sword light. The sword light streaked across the void, illuminating the entire sky. It forcibly opened up a path in the powerful domain. Boom! The sword technique collided with the domain. At the moment when the sword intent exploded, Luo Shang's flames formed a cold light that enveloped everyone. Within the flames was the powerful metal controlled by Qingyan. Within the metal was Xiang Nan's sword shadow stone wall. Within the stone wall was Muyu's trees, and Tian Ran's golden lotus was the last layer of defense. The 5 people's abilities were wrapped in layers, forcibly forming a copper wall of defense, tenaciously clashing with the domain of the strange races. 40 various powerful laws all smashed onto their walls. Muyu and the others were instantly sent flying. The 5 of them had already merged into their respective metal spirit, fire spirit, earth spirit, and Mu Ling at the critical moment. However, the terrifying fluctuations produced by the 40 powerful domains directly passed through these powerful 5 elements magic treasures, causing them to take a hit. The 5 elements magic treasures were very hard magic treasures. In the past, they had relied on these magic treasures to avoid damage. However, when facing a great ascension stage expert, hiding in the magic treasures was useless. Bang, bang, bang. Whether it was Luo Shang's Sea of Flames, Qingyin's metal, Xiangnan's earth and rocks, or Muyu's trees, they were all shattered. After receiving a huge impact, everyone's aura withered. The violent aura wrapped all of them in it. The airwaves rolled, and the place where they were was no longer alive. There was no aura coming from the center of the explosion. It was as if Mu Yu and the others were directly killed by the explosion. There was no possibility of survival. The place was distorted by a powerful and terrifying fluctuation, and it did not recover for a long time. Are they dead? A bone race person asked. This was the question of all the strange races present. They had paid a painful price to come here today. They were also shocked by Mu Yu's powerful domain ability. If the domain ability of 40 great ascension stage experts was not enough to kill these people, then these strange races would find it difficult to accept. All the humans on the 3 continents looked at the center of the explosion in fear. Being swept by 40 powerful domains, it was impossible for anyone else to survive. Looks like the real obstacle has finally been removed. The lower 3rd layer of the heavens is finally ours. Huh! A soul race person laughed arrogantly. All the strange races laughed wildly in the air. They looked at the center of the explosion with contempt and viciousness. A total of 11 great ascension stage experts had died in the hands of Mu Yu and the others. It was impossible to say that they were not resentful. But soon, all the strange races stopped laughing because the distorted center of the explosion began to return to normal. And when the smoke and dust dissipated, a tall mountain peak appeared in front of them. The mountain peak was full of vitality. Bees and butterflies danced in the air. The grass was long and the birds were flying. There was also a waterfall pouring down from the peak. It was peaceful but vast and majestic. Such a mountain peak appeared in the wasteland that had been destroyed thousands of times. It was especially eye-catching. Tao Artifact, Heavenly Birth, Reincarnation Peak. If you really think that we can be defeated so easily, then you are very wrong. At the top of the Heavenly Birth Reincarnation Peak, the 5 of them stood upright like javelins. Their clothes fluttered in the wind, as each of their faces carried a trace of determination and contempt. They were filled with murderous intent towards the foreign races. The Heaven Spill Reincarnation Peak transformed into its original form at the critical moment and protected Mu Yu and the others, forcibly blocking the 40 domain attacks. Damn Tao Artifact! Bai Jie was furious. It was already very heaven-defying for him to be able to control a single Tao artifact, but Mu Yu and the others had several. Whether it was the heart-questioning attraction or the Heaven Spill Reincarnation Peak, they were all rare treasures in the world. This made him very jealous. Although the Heaven Spill Reincarnation Peak did not have the chaotic yin and yang, and the heart-questioning attraction did not recognize Mu Yu as its master, the power it could unleash was very strong. Even if it could not destroy the Sumeru sun-changing diagram, it was enough to protect Mu Yu and the others from harm. However, you have a Tao artifact, but do not know how to unleash its true power. It will only bury it. Let's see how long you can last before the Sumeru sun-changing diagram. Bai Jie said coldly. The Sumeru sun-changing diagram once again condensed a powerful starlight and smashed down on the Heaven Spill Reincarnation Peak. The Heaven Spill Reincarnation Peak emitted a faintly discernible golden array pattern. This array pattern was the so close, yet worlds apart array pattern. It was this aura that had protected everyone just now. The Sumeru sun-changing diagram was very powerful in Bai Jie's hands. It slammed into the Heaven Spill Reincarnation Peak, causing it to tremble slightly. Soon, cracks began to appear in the sky above the Heaven Spill Reincarnation Peak. Without the chaotic yin and yang, it could not completely block the Sumeru sun-changing diagram. Mu Yu and the others frowned slightly as they thought of a plan to deal with it. However, at that moment, 2 angry voices suddenly came from the sky. Brother Kong Kong, someone is attacking our nest. This is too much. Sister Meow Meow, don't worry. Brother will kill them. Two figures tore through the void and appeared in the sky above the wasteland. Then, they landed in front of Mu Yu and the others. They were the restless twins of the Luochen Mountain, Kong Kong and Meow Meow. You two? Why are you here? Mu Yu and the others were pleasantly surprised to see Kong Kong and Meow Meow, who had grown taller. Both Kong Kong and Meow Meow were wearing clean short shirts. Their skin was fair and tender, which made them look very lovable. Mu Yu and the others did not expect that Kong Kong and Meow Meow, who had been missing for a long time, would appear at this time. Moreover, it seemed that their cultivation levels had increased greatly. And Shu brought us here. He said that there are some fun Japanese people here to fight. Kong Kong winked mischievously. Yes, we are here to fight the Japanese people, Meow Meow said seriously. The two of them were only at the form synthesis stage, which was not enough to deal with so many mysterious tribesmen at the Great Vehicle stage. However, their identities were not simple. They were the chaotic yin and yang of the Heaven Spill Reincarnation Peak. And Shu is here? Where is he? Qingyan asked hurriedly. Here. The void trembled again. Then, a figure appeared in the sky and looked at everyone expressionlessly. Mu Yu and the others looked at Uncle in surprise. Suddenly, there was a storm in their hearts because the aura that appeared on Uncle N's body was the fluctuation of the Great Vehicle stage. Chapter 1156. The shock that Shu's appearance brought to Mu Yu and the others was incomparable. In the impression of Mu Yu and the others, Shu had always been at the Jindan period. His face was expressionless, and he was extremely strict with them every day. He would also punish them with terrible cooking skills. Everyone's impression of Shu was one of reverence. But no one would have thought that Shu would appear here at this time, and he would actually appear as a great ascension stage cultivator. How much was Shu hiding? Mu Yu looked at Qingyan. He remembered that Qingyan said that he had seen Shu once last time. At that time, Shu's cultivation was only at the Jindan period, but how did he become a great ascension stage cultivator at this time? But Qingyan's eyes were also full of puzzlement. He obviously couldn't figure out. Shu stood in the void and stared coldly at Bai Jia. Bai Jia also stared at Shu. Ran Hengshi, you actually came to die at this time. Bai Jia sneered. As soon as Bai Jia's voice fell, everyone was stunned. What? Ran Hengshi? Shu was Ran Hengshi? Mu Yu and the others thought that they had heard wrong. How can Shu be Ran Hengshi? One of the 9 immortals was actually Shu. No one knew about this, but Bai Jia actually knew about it, and Shu still said expressionlessly, I'm not here to die. I'm here to bury you. And Shu's tone was neither sad nor happy. No one could hear any meaning at all, but everyone in Luochen Mountain felt an involuntary shudder, because every time Shu spoke in this tone, it meant that they would face severe punishment. Mu Yu and the others had too many questions in their hearts. They couldn't understand why Shu was a great ascension stage cultivator. If he was a great ascension stage cultivator, why was he able to survive in the immortal confining prison back in the Moyen Mountain Range? One had to know that the immortal confining prison was a powerful formation technique that could kill anyone whose cultivation surpassed Mu Yu's master. But Shu didn't seem to have any intention of explaining, and the others didn't ask. Everyone's attention was on Bai Jia. Defeating Bai Jia was the most important thing now. You want to bury me? What give you the right? Bai Jia looked at Zhan Henshi coldly. Zhan Henshi gave him a very strong feeling, but it was far from enough to make him feel fear. By the heavenly sword, Shu turned his gaze to Mu Yu and the others. He waved his hand, and the other 4 heavenly swords suddenly appeared in the void. The heavenly swords trembled slightly and emitted a strange fluctuation. Mu Yu's heart moved. He found that his shadow swords had unknowingly gained a trace of soul. It was as if 9 brothers had met and were resonating with each other. Not only Mu Yu, but Qingyan and the others also felt that the swords in their hands seemed to have some subtle changes. 9 heavenly swords? Impossible. Lord Heavenkeeper said that 2 of the 9 heavenly swords were sealed by him. You can't have them. When Bai Jie saw the 4 heavenly swords in Shu's hand, his heart turned cold. He knew better than anyone what 9 heavenly swords meant, because it was an existence that even Heaven Keeper was extremely afraid of. Little Shuai, who had been lying on Mu Yu's shoulder, suddenly stood up. He looked at the 4 heavenly swords around Shu, and then looked at the shadow swords in Mu Yu's hand. He scratched his head and touched Mu Yu in confusion. He said, "Mu Yu, I feel like I have remembered something." "What did you remember?" Mu Yu asked. Little Shuai shook his head. "I don't know. My mind is in a mess." Many memories flashed past. Heavenly sword. I feel like it's the heavenly sword. Heavenly sword. Give me the shadow swords. Mu Yu hesitated for a moment before handing the shadow swords to Little Shuai. Little Shuai grabbed the shadow swords with his little claws. The moment he grabbed the shadow swords, Little Shuai's white fur suddenly stood on end. He was filled with powerful sword intent. It was as if he had turned into a hedgehog filled with sword intent. Mu Yu couldn't help but feel a chill on his neck. "Little Shuai." Mu Yu turned his head in shock. Little Shuai's entire body floated up. His sapphire-like eyes suddenly became extremely deep. They were like vast stars, as if they contained an entire world. Whoosh! Whoosh! The heavenly swords in Qingyan, Luo Shang, Xiangnan, and Tian Ran's hands involuntarily flew out and landed on Little Shuai's feet. The 4 heavenly swords next to Shu also flew over. The 9 heavenly swords were like brothers who hadn't seen each other in a long time. They happily revolved around Little Shuai. Pure erosion, heaven burning, stargazing, shadow swords, clear ice, immortal dew, strange howl, light string, and rainbow light. The 9 heavenly swords all had different sword lights. They were cold and sharp. Little Shuai flashed around the 9 flying heavenly swords. Each heavenly sword that he stepped on would create ripples. Little Shuai's aura would become stronger. After he stepped on all 9 heavenly swords, the lights of the 9 heavenly swords suddenly converged. However, their aura became even stronger. "Shu, what's wrong with Little Shuai?" Mu Yu asked. Shu calmly said, "The strongest magic treasure in this world is not a Tao treasure. It is the 9 heavenly swords." Buzz. As soon as Shu finished speaking, Little Shuai's body became extremely hazy. It was as if he was covered by a fog, making it impossible to tell if he was real or not. His entire body exuded a sharp sword aura. He was different from his usual playful self. Sword intent burst out from his body. His small body seemed to contain a terrifying volcano. Boom! The 9 heavenly swords soared into the sky and rotated in the air. They actually merged into one. Meanwhile, Little Shuai had already disappeared into the field. This sword carried the characteristics of the 9 heavenly swords. A golden light bloomed from the sword, becoming the focus of the world. The entire void was trembling. It was almost impossible to stabilize. A terrifying aura surged out with the heavenly sword as the center. "Mu Yu, quickly kill the little white ghost with me." Little Shuai's distant voice came from the heavenly sword. The aura of this heavenly sword rotated and landed on Mu Yu's body. Little Shuai chose Mu Yu because he was the most familiar with her. The two of them flirted all day long and had long reached the point where they could read each other's minds. With just a glance, they could understand what the other wanted to say. Mu Yu flew up without hesitation. He passed through the divine aura of the heavenly sword and grabbed the hilt of the heavenly sword. The moment he grabbed the heavenly sword, he felt as if the world had stopped again. It was as if he was holding a world. The sword in his hand was no longer just a sword. It was a universe with endless life. Everything in the world, including the reversal of the universe, was on this sword. And Mu Yu himself seemed to have become the ruler of the world. With a swing of his sword, the world was destroyed. With a swing of his sword, all things were towering. This heavenly sword represented everything. He could use the heavenly sword to sever all karma in the world. He could reshape the laws of the world. He represented the world. Everyone would prostrate at his feet. Once the heavenly sword appeared, no one dared to compete. Muyu's body was enveloped by the golden sword light. He had already seen little Shuai's heart. Little Shuai was like a child who did not know the ways of the world. He had a powerful sword intent, but he had sealed all of it away. At this time, the 9 swords became one. Little Shuai was the sword spirit. He had returned and merged with the heavenly sword. He controlled the vast world and the ethereal heavenly Tao. Muyu now understood just how powerful the 9 heavenly swords were. The moment the 9 swords became one, Bai Jie's expression changed. He clearly felt a trace of fear appear in the Sumeru, sun-changing painting. It was as if he had seen his nemesis. The originally insufferably powerful aura was gradually suppressed by the heavenly sword in Muyu's hand. There was only one absolute powerhouse in this world, and that was the heavenly sword. It's time for us to settle this. Muyu's eyes glowed with a black and white light as he stared at Bai Jie. This time, he did not use any superfluous moves. He simply thrust out his sword. This sword cut open a pitch-black crack in space. It cannot even be healed. With a slash of her sword, the Sumeru sun, shifting diagrams, desolate plains immediately crumbled. The stars in the sky returned to everyone's eyes. The demon kings and Deadwood, who had been restrained by Bai Jie's Sumeru, sun, shifting diagram, also broke through the obstruction and looked at Muyu in shock. That person, that sword, became the only focus of the world. This is the real heavenly sword. Dead Tree was slightly shocked. He had clearly seen this sword before. Although he did not like Jianing Chunfeng, he did not deny the power of Jianing Chunfeng. Jianing Chunfeng's 9 heavenly swords became one. There was nothing in the world that could block this sword. All the enslaved humans on the 3 continents also looked at the sword in the sky in bewilderment. They were also subdued by the might of the sky sword. The terror of the sky sword was beyond everyone's imagination. It was a majesty that could not be profaned. It made people tremble and submit to it from the depths of their bones. Crash! The stars in the sky, summoned by the Sumeru sun, changing, painting suddenly shattered like porcelain. It was a powerful Tao artifact, but it was unable to withstand the heavenly sword in Muyu's hand. The heavenly sword's power had long overshadowed the Sumeru sun-changing painting. This Tao artifact was actually trembling in front of the heavenly sword. Bai Jie's face was already ashen. He did not expect such a situation to occur. He never expected that all the heavenly swords would be gathered together. As for the strange races, their faces were filled with extreme fear. They were trembling. Their entire bodies were trembling. No one dared to look down on the heavenly sword. Even the arrogant and domineering strange races. Any strange race that dares to invade the 3 continents must die. Muyu's heavenly sword slashed down at all the great vehicle stage, strange races who were in a daze. His movements were not fast. Everyone could clearly see the trajectory of his sword. However, the sword intent in his hand was very fast. It was so fast that it was unimaginable. No one could keep up with the speed of the sword intent slaughter. All the great vehicle stage, strange races were terrified. They wanted to escape, but they realized that they could not. They did not even have the courage to escape. The heavenly sword's power could destroy the heavens and earth. Whoever it wanted to kill would not be able to live. Bang! 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 All the great vehicle stage, strange races' bodies gradually turned into ashes. Under the terrifying power of the heavenly sword, they were annihilated into nothingness. Not even a trace of them was left. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.